Welcome to the City of Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment meeting for July 7th, 2022. The agenda documents and minutes are located at okc.primegov.com/public/portal. For anyone wishing to speak today, hopefully you've previously notified staff. If you're the applicant, you'll be acknowledged to speak at the appropriate time. If you are not the applicant and would like to speak, hopefully you've already filled out one of these white forms. It's available on the table outside and given it to staff. And if you haven't done so already, now's the time to do so. We will call the case, and then I will recognize the applicant or the applicant's representative to speak, and then we will recognize any protests, supporters, and then discussion will be closed unless opened by me or another board member. The board will then deliberate and vote. For speakers other than the applicant, please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. If several people have similar comments, we ask that you designate 1 or 2 speakers to speak on behalf of a group. And then if anyone has any additional comments, we'll call on those people at the appropriate time. After your item has been heard, or if you have a different matter to raise with the board, you'll be allowed to speak under the citizens to be heard portion of the agenda. Board members will be allowed to make comments or ask questions at any time throughout the meeting. Please do not interrupt board members while they're speaking, because we need a clear record and it makes the meetings go by much faster. Before you begin with your comments, please identify yourself by stating your name and your address. And I call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to receive the minutes from the June 2nd, 2022 meeting. Are there any changes or a motion?
I'll move approval of the minutes from the June 2nd meeting.
Got a motion and a second to receive the minutes from the June 2nd, 2022 meeting. Looks like we're waiting on the voting pane, but once you're able to, cast your votes. And the minutes are approved. Next item is continuance requests or withdrawals. Do we have any?
None.
Okay. Is anyone out there that has a matter hoping to get a continuance today? We can address that now. Okay. Seeing none. We'll now move on to the consent docket, which, seeing none, we'll move to items requiring a separate vote.
The first item for public hearing is case 15021, request of Aaron Roush for a variance to the accessory building regulations at 7225 Ridge Manor Lane.
Is the applicant present? Okay. Good afternoon.
7225 Ridge Manor Lane. I came in, I believe it was May, and I had a list of things that I was requesting variance on. One of them was, it was denied because it had to be set back from the property lines by 25 feet, and I had requested 3 feet. And it was granted 10 at that meeting. Well then, after I did more research on it, that would put my building within 2 feet of my septic system. And according to city code, it can't be within 5 feet. So I'm coming back to see if I can do 5 feet from my property lines.
I remember the hearing. I think we sort of had a pretty lengthy back and forth, and you revised some things, I think. And I think you sort of barely squeaked out of here with the variance the first time on that. And so I don't know for me what's changed, but I don't know how the rest of the board feels about it. Board members, any questions or comments? Okay. It sounded like, let me double check here. And right now you're asking for 5 feet
Yes.
for a variance?
Or 5, I can go, I was originally asking for 3, but if I go 5, that puts it 8 foot from my septic.
So I sort of, doing the calculations in my head, saw 3 feet that you needed to get away from your septic, because what we approved put you 2 feet. The city requires 5 feet, so that's 3 feet. And
So let me,
if we,
my numbers were a little bit wrong on those, and I apologize. So my septic is 53 feet from the fence line.
okay, I don't know how that impacts. I'm going off of the numbers that you just presented.
Right.
And so I'll tell you where I was going with that, is if we if we give you an additional 3 feet, it sounds like that would accommodate
Yes,
everything.
yes,
Okay.
we can make that work,
Oh,
absolutely.
okay. The request seeks, well, you start out the request by saying 5 feet
Right.
from that fence line, which is a huge, I mean, it's a 25-foot
Mm-hmm.
variance. But if it's just another 3 feet, I think I could support it. I don't know about the rest of the board, but, and are you sure that would get you the relief?
So just to clarify, so the last meeting, we approved 10,
Yes.
so we're basically going to 7 now? Is that right? Because if we do that 7, if I have my 53 feet and I go 7 from the line, that gives me 47, that gives me 6 foot from my septic system.
Oh, okay, so, I was thinking of this in reverse, and so, I was thinking of how, well, anyway, you're right, we approved 10 feet from the fence line.
Yes.
I guess, and then, so you're encroaching 15 feet. And
Yes.
so if we agreed with you today, it would be 7 foot, basically.
I would be encroaching
An additional.
17, well,
You'd
13?
You'd be 18.
18, yes.
Yeah, leaving a
Yes,
7-foot setback.
that's correct,
That's how I interpret it.
that's correct.
It's still a pretty massive variance. I don't know how the board feels about it, but
It's just, it's hard to get there with that yard being so big. And, you know, just, I know it's handy to have it right there where your driveway is, but
I think a question was asked last time whether we could bring the size of the building down. And have that help, so I don't know if that would,
I mean, I already put a deposit down on that size, and I have the plans done. I mean, I could possibly try, but with the size that I need to do my stuff, then like I said, with my wife working at home, working out of there, she needs that space.
I guess for the record, my comments are probably similar to what I said last time, is that this request is substantial, and statutorily, I don't think we get there. For me, it's the unnecessary hardship provision of the statutory requirements as well as the minimum necessary. I think that there are things, just because you want a building this big doesn't necessarily mean that it's the, minimum necessary to alleviate, and besides that, I don't find that there's an unnecessary hardship. So I probably said something similar last meeting, so I'm just stating again for the record.
yeah, I just think we were really close to denying the application last time. And I think we kind of barely squeaked out of here with what we approved. And so I didn't really expect to see it again. So I understand your comments, Ms. Ybarra. I also, I think we could probably get a smaller building there to where we wouldn't need the additional variance. So, any other board members? I don't have anyone signed up to speak. Is anyone else hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Seeing none, board members, I think we can take questions, comments, or a motion.
I can probably ask her if she can drop the building down to where I meet within perfect. I just don't know what the price increase is gonna be, because that would be an uncommon sized building, if that makes sense. So I can get with the company and ask them if we can do, if I can have that 15 encroachment to drop it down to, it would end up being, instead of a 40 by 40, it'd be like a 37 by 40. And I can ask her if they can do that, if there's no, if that's what you guys say, I'm gonna deal with it.
Yeah.
That's,
It's just, I think you're getting
No,
so
I
much
understand.
pushback because this is
I
a big
understand, yeah.
variance. We're
And
used to
I'm not trying to be,
Yeah, I understand. And you've
So, I
worked
mean-
with us, and yeah, we appreciate that.
yeah, and
as well.
I'll do whatever you guys say. Like I said, I can get with her and say, hey, can I drop it down to 3 feet smaller? I didn't try that yet, so I don't know what she's gonna say.
Okay. I think what would be in your best interest would be to get a continuance and work some of that stuff out. And one problem that the board hasn't stated yet is typically a financial hardship is not a hardship that we recognize, at
Okay.
least under the statute. And so I mean, we've had people tear down fully built buildings before, you know, or go to the planning commission and get it rezoned or something. But I think maybe looking into some of those alternatives and seeking a continuance rather than where it looks like maybe the board's going is just an outright denial, is just seeking a continuance and then coming back with some options. Or if the options you have mean that you don't even need to come back here, then you don't even need to come back here.
So just to clarify then, so are we set right now where I can encroach 15 feet? Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if I say we're good to go, we're just gonna go, I'll make it work?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
And
I can
I would,
do
I
that,
would
that's
notify
fine.
the city just to make sure they know to take this item off the agendas going forward.
What was that again?
I would notify the city.
Okay.
And make sure, if you get it sorted out.
Sure.
To make sure that it doesn't kind of languish on the
Sure.
docket. But other than that, yeah, if they can work through it, then you don't have to come back here again. And if there's some alternative where you need like an extra foot or something like that, and you just can't make anything else work, then you can come back and the board can discuss it.
Okay, yeah, I'll leave here and I'll call the company and see if we can work something, so that's.
Okay. Do you want to have I think our next meeting is not until next month. Yeah, and so we can grant you a continuance until next month. If you think you can get it sorted out now, we can move this item to the end of the agenda and you can come back later today, or we can just continue it till the next meeting, whatever you think.
I'll figure it out. If we can stay with that 15-foot encroachment, I'll figure something out.
Okay. Why don't we
Then
just
that's
continue
fine.
until the next meeting, and then if you need to come back, you can. If not, you can notify the city. Is that?
Okay.
Okay. Board members, I think we can take a motion then to continue this to the next meeting.
I'll move we continue it to whatever's the next meeting date,
August 4th.
August 4th? Okay.
August 4th.
Sounds like a second?
Oh, yeah, I'll second.
Okay. Got a motion and a second to continue this item to the August 4th, 2022 meeting. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's continued.
Roger that.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item 2 is case 15065, request of Ryan Hoffman for a variance of the setback regulations at 9116 Woodrock Drive.
Afternoon, Brian Hoffman, 9116 Woodrock Drive. Requesting, from listening to the gentleman before, so from my septic to the fence is 38 feet from the sidewall of the septic. Obviously, hearing y'all, I'd have to push it back past the septic. I don't know if y'all have the pictures I provided. Because I got that, you can tell where the septic sprays. I don't know what kind of damage over time corrosion would do to the metal. I know they say you can drink out of that water, but I don't believe it. I mean, the closest I could get if I left it where I planned would be 9 feet. If you have the city ordinance 5 feet from the septic, the 24-foot wide shop, and it's at 38 feet. So it'd be 9 feet from the fence line. And then there was the second portion of the variance for the side height for the shop. 12 foot is the city ordinance statute. I was looking for 16.
The application references that the shop would encroach 15 feet, so you'd have a 10-foot side setback, and then now you're saying it would be actually
Yeah.
9 feet, or?
Yeah, just listen, I didn't know the 5 foot from the septic. I guess I overlooked that portion. So if all I can get is 10 foot from the fence line, if y'all are willing to do that, I'd have to push the front of that shop past the septic. Right now where it plans, it's 25 feet from the front fence is where the shop would be. So it'd probably be it'd probably be 35 feet from the front to, I guess it'd be the west fence line. Then obviously you'd have to push back. I'd have to see if I can maybe change the sprinkler head on the septic. I don't know if they have different spray patterns for that to maybe stop it. There's also a tree there that I probably wouldn't have to move if it's just 10 feet. If I have to go any like 15 feet or 20 feet, I'd have to, just the tree blooming out would start messing with the shop. I'd have to move a big old tree back there. And then you also have obviously the line from the septic running to that first spray head, that if it go any further past that 10 feet, I'd have to move that whole line, shift that over, because I think it's only, my septic guy said it's only like 3 inches under the ground.
So maybe to echo some of the comments from the prior application, there's some things that the Oklahoma legislature has said that we're required to find in all these applications. First being that there's something peculiar about, second, something peculiar about the property, that the code provides some unnecessary hardship on you. What you're trying to do would not be detrimental to the public good. And then what you're trying to do is the minimum necessary to alleviate that unnecessary hardship. And so again, as you probably heard from the last application, we kind of struggle with the hardship aspect on a lot of these. And the hardship here, it seems to be that you bought an RV. I mean, and so other than that, normally a hardship is, you buy a property and some inspection comes in and says that your shop encroaches 1 foot after you've bought this property, it's been there since the 70s, something like that. That's the traditional kind of hardship that we get. But here, again, the hardship seems to be just you bought a larger RV, and the code tends to say to me that it just doesn't want buildings this large encroaching on that setback. So I think those will, if you want to address any of those points, that.
So you talking about there wouldn't be any variance? I'd have to build 25 from that?
I mean, or just not, the code says you can build something there that's got a 25-foot setback
Yeah.
and that's smaller, that's 12 feet.
Gotcha. On the whole issue with, you can't really tell from the pictures, there's a berm right here that's raised up, and it kind of drops down because there's a pond, a strip pond. Our HOA, we're not allowed to mess with any flow of water, and I guess it's there for, in case it floods up, to stop flowing over. So there's a little berm between those. And I have a septic well, or not a septic well, a well on the north side that it can't be within 90 feet. I think that's the septic can't be within 90 feet of the well. So if I move my shop back with it, like have it 25 feet from the fence line, from the south fence line, and 25 feet from the back fence line, it would end up putting it where the tree is, the sprinkler head. So I'd have to shift that bottom south aerobic sprayer. And I'd have to move all those over. When doing that, it would basically have to shift these over, and it would become 90 feet from my wells right here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that just sort of presupposes that you have to build this thing, right? And so that's I think the core issue that the board has sometimes is,
Yeah.
do you have to have this thing there? And if the city says that if you're gonna have it, it's gotta be a certain place, then it has to be in a certain place. The more egregious ones we get are, I guess, pools.
Yeah.
People come in and try to get variances like this to put a pool in, and it's like,
Yeah.
is the need for a pool really a hardship, you know? And so, I think that's where the board struggles on these kinds of applications. I'm only one board member, I'm not saying I'm necessarily against it,
Yeah.
but those are just some of the things to consider and to potentially address. Board members, any questions or comments?
I do have a comment because it's stating that you're wanting to put an RV in this building that you're
Yes.
constructing.
Yes, ma'am.
So number one, according to the code, the RV that you're wanting to put there is larger than the building that you're allowed to have. So therefore, do you have the RV already?
Do I have it
Have you
already?
purchased it already?
I have one I was going to purchase from someone that's selling, their family member died. I was going to purchase that.
Oh, and see, that may be a problem for me because we approved of that. However, according to the code, you're not supposed to have it larger than the 12 feet, but you're asking for additional footage just to accommodate that RV.
Yes, so, yeah, I talked to a couple people that had the variances approved in the neighborhood. One guy doesn't have a fifth wheel, just has a tow behind bumper pull. And it was just the standard size. His was too small for the standard 12-foot sidewalls. obviously, you said financial, or HOA, we're not allowed to park anything in the driveway. It has to be behind a fence, a privacy fence, but unfortunately, we're not allowed to have a privacy fence because we're right next to the pond. And I didn't know we can't put a privacy fence until after reading through the bylaws and purchasing it, so.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We have approved these. I think some of them, particularly on the height of the walls, I think we work with people on that a little bit depending on the area. But when you start adding up multiple variances, you get a little bit more scrutiny from us. I will say one thing that's in your favor is the sort of part of town that you're in. You're not trying to stick this in the Plaza District or something. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit, that's in your favor, I think. But any other questions or comments from the board?
I guess for the record, I'll state my concerns, similar to the last, is the hardship and the minimum necessary. I know we've talked about the height variance that you're asking for, but I don't know about the setback variance, if there's any way to make it smaller, or if this building that you're proposing to build is the exact size box that you need to put this in. So if there's a way to make it smaller, like the chairman said, we might be able to consider the height variance or the wall variance that you're asking for. But putting it all together is pretty significant.
Yeah, so on the reason for the side walls, I know state law is like 13 feet, 6 inches for camper height, street legal. So to park that in there, I even was gonna buy an open truss. So I don't know, open truss, you don't have that bottom layer. So you can kind of wiggle it, shift it over, because if you have to park it straight in. So I was looking at like the 30 by 40, but I kind of narrowed it down to that 24 by 50. It only leaves 6 feet on either side of the door. So it kind of made it small enough to get a camper in there, for not having to park it at, RV center that gets broken into a lot. It can be in the facility, in my shop, locked up. I know it's safe. I don't have to go check on it all the time.
Again, I don't disagree that it'd be more convenient for you, but as far as it meeting a statutory requirement of being an unnecessary hardship, I don't get there on the application. But
And I can,
like our chairman says, I'm one board member, so.
I mean, I can deal with 12. I can buy a smaller camper and see if I can, I don't know, flatten the tires a little and get it in, and then air it back up, if that's the issue on that portion.
Well, and again, it's not so much the wall variance. I think we have, tend to work with people on those, but.
Yeah, if it's maybe 2 or 3 feet on the setback, I think we could get with you on that plus the height. It wouldn't be the best case for a variance, but I think the board would probably work with you. But just the 15 feet encroachment plus 40% variance on the height, 30%, but yeah, so.
Or y'all would be able to do like 15 feet on the variance? Because I know there's a couple houses that have 15 feet. I don't know if that, in the neighborhood, I don't know if that would work. I would have to push it back a little bit more. Like I said, I'd have to move the septic sprayers.
Just given the part of the city you're in, I could probably get on board with something like that. But I don't know about the rest of the board, but you could probably find my vote somewhere for that. But I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that.
Where you're located at, it's okay with me, because you're not within the city limits where everybody can see it, so that's okay. I was just a little bit concerned about that wall height, because I don't see where you're asking for a variance for that.
No, it's in there.
Oh,
It's
so
two.
I overlooked it.
It's two, yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's a good eye, because he would need that, and you're right back here in front of us if he didn't get
okay,
it. But it is
gotcha.
included in there, so 2 variances.
Actually, the other variances, I believe, were approved at the last meeting, and with it was the setback that was denied. So we're just having to deal with the setback today.
Okay.
Did you say the sidewall was? Was
I think
approved.
the,
Item D was approved before?
Yeah, I just saw in
I
the,
believe so. If it
case
wasn't, then
history-
then we need to include them all.
okay. Case history just says it's a new application, so,
Oh, I see. Yeah.
so I read this application as requesting both variances. If you don't think that's true, then we need to have a new notice period, I think, but, okay, with both variances, okay, then I'm okay with that part of it. Okay, so Ms. Asbury, to answer your questions, it is formally seeking 2 variances, so both are covered.
You.
I don't have anyone else signed up to speak. Is there anyone else hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Hearing none. Board members, I think questions, comments, or a motion?
So just for clarification purposes, did we approve of, we did not? Okay, thank you.
Yes, for purposes of making a motion, I would move that we deny the request in case number 15065 for the reasons that it does not meet the statutory conditions for the variance requested.
And I'm going to have to second it based upon conversation.
Do we, before we vote on this, do we want to give them an opportunity to, and I'll check with our municipal counselor in a second, but do we want to give them an opportunity to modify the application before it gets denied?
If you're interested in
Yes.
that.
Yeah, I'd rather try to modify it so
I
Okay.
withdraw my second.
Okay, is that all right if the motion is withdrawn? Okay, well, if you withdraw your motion.
I will withdraw my motion.
Okay. So our next meeting is in a month, as you heard from our last applicant. Did you want to request a continuance to that
Yes.
meeting? Okay, and then modify it and maybe minimize some things?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do we have a motion for that?
I'll
So-
move we continue it,
Okay,
I'll second.
August,
okay,
whatever.
okay. August 4th. Got a motion and a second to continue this item to the August 4th, 2022 meeting. Once we get a voting pane, cast your votes. I know we're giving you a lot of votes down there, sorry. Mr. Privet, do you want to continue? Or she says your vote didn't get registered.
Oh, it's on the screen.
Do you want to go by voice vote, I guess?
Yeah, it's green.
I vote yay.
Okay. Sounds like that's approved. Yep, okay, that's
There it
approved.
goes.
So we'll see you August 4th.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You won't.
Item green, case 15067, request of Anthony Nelson for a variance to the accessory building regulations at 1800 Edinburgh Court.
Hello, good afternoon. I guess I need to get a variance to finish my shed. I didn't know I needed a setback of 5 feet, and I'm only 3.6 from my side fence. And with the way the property is positioned in the cul-de-sac, I kind of sit on a funky angle. So, and then I guess I found out next to my shed is the storm shelter, so I really can't scoot it over, and the building's already built.
Yeah, this is one I think, well, at least I think I can work with you on. The cul-de-sac throws a lot of people off. It's pretty minimal. I don't know that I have a problem with it. Board members, any questions or comments?
None at all.
I don't have anyone signed up to speak. Is anyone else hoping to speak on this application? Hearing none. Questions, comments, or a motion?
I'd like to motion that we approve case number 15067 for a variance.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case 15067 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Once you're able to, cast your vote. And it's approved.
Awesome, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Item 4 is case 15070, request of Joel Lopez for a variance to the lot width regulations of the AA District at 14428 North Indian Meridian.
Mary Aguirre for 15070. I'm requesting a variance of the 150 feet required for the AA zone because we are landlocked and we do have a road and utility easement for this property.
I think that sometimes we like these to go through planning, but sometimes we also like to, well, not like to, but we also can get on board with approving them. Board members, any questions or comments?
The only question I had is, under the staff recommendations, it says relief from the frontage and lot width requirements. Are those one and the same?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure.
It's because of the lot width that they need that relief? Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? I don't have anyone signed up to speak. Was anyone else hoping to speak on this application? Seeing none. Questions, comments, or motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
I'll second. Oh,
Beat ya.
Mike's got it.
I have a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case 15070 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5 is case 15975, request of Willis Holdeman for a variance to the setback regulations at 10908 Northwest 99th Street.
Yeah, I'm requesting a variance for the setback on the north side of that
Got to
house.
stop you right there before the municipal counselor
Oh.
kicks me on the foot. Could you start with your name and your address, just for the record?
Oh, yes,
Okay,
I
thank
apologize.
you.
Yeah, it's Willis Holdeman, 10908 Northwest 99th Street,
Okay, thanks.
and that's Yukon, Oklahoma.
Okay.
So you can see the lot's a triangular lot. The thing that you don't see on there is, the reason it's triangular is there's those massive power lines that are like 60 feet tall, and you have to stay 75 feet on either side of those, and my house is built, the front of the house. I've got the setback right on the front of the house, but on the north side, that wanted to be 40 feet, and I'm 78 feet from the power lines, and I'm 31 feet from that side, so I'm kind of stuck, and I went through, house is built, I got all the application, certificate of occupancy and all that stuff all done, went through all that stuff with the city, and then when we were going to get the final mortgage, the title company did the survey and then said we had to have a variance on that, so that's why I'm here.
Is this something that maybe the city missed early on, or?
Pretty extensive.
Yeah, got pretty
it's-
far.
Yeah, either a permit issue or it was not built in accordance with the permit. One
Okay.
of the two, I don't know which.
Okay.
Does have a really weird lot.
Yeah.
layout.
Yeah, there's only one house on it too, as you can see, so the setbacks are there, but there's no other houses anywhere around on it, and so, but again, the 25-foot setback, I got that, but the other side I had to stay away, and I thought all of that was good when we went through all the application and certificate of occupancy and all that stuff, and I thought everything was good whenever we were going through all the inspections and got all the approval for all that, so.
On that southeast side, I mean, well, I'll still ask. On that southeast side, where we've got the diagonal and there's an easement in favor of OG&E,
Yeah.
are you, is there a buffer there from all of your setback requirements, or are you on the edge of a setback?
And is there a buffer?
Are you well within your setback range there? You mentioned a 75.
Yeah,
foot.
from that dotted line
Yeah.
is the power line. And the corner of the building is 78 feet. And I made sure it was a little over 75 feet back from that power line.
Okay.
And whenever I was going through all the applications and all that, they basically said, I understood from them saying that, yeah, since the house has got this setback, that we are locked, and they approved everything, we went on through. So now the house is done, built, and then I just couldn't finalize the mortgage, and this all came as a big surprise.
Yeah, yeah. I believe you. The only thing I was thinking about is, and that I try to watch for,
Yeah.
is for people who overbuild
Yeah.
beyond setback requirements and then come try to get a variance afterward.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So if you're abutting this the southeast setback, it's plausible that someone could do that. I don't think you did that, but I try to watch for that and make sure people don't sort of build and then say, oh, my hardship is I built this $1 million house and so I can't tear it down. So I don't think you did that here. I think you tried to comply and follow everything you were supposed to follow, and then I guess with the mortgage inspection or something came through and showed that you needed a variance. So I think I can get on board with this. Board members, do you have any questions or comments? The applicant? Don't have anyone else signed up to speak. Was anyone else hoping to speak on this application? Seeing none. Questions, comments, or a motion?
I'd like to move that we approve case number 15075 for a variance based on the ground that it meets the statutory requirements.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the variance request in case 15075 for the reason it meets statutory conditions for a variance. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved. All right, thank you.
Appreciate it, guys and ladies.
Item 6, case 15079, request of Millwood Schools for a variance to the sign regulations at 6724 North Martin Luther King Avenue.
Hello, John Pettis, 6724 North Martin Luther King Avenue, here on behalf of Millwood Public Schools. With me is also my boss, the superintendent of Millwood Public Schools, which is, by the way, the best school district in Oklahoma. We are here today asking for 3 variants. The first variance is the number of signs we can have on our campus. Our campus is a campus that's a total of 40 acres. On our campus, we are a now 0 to adult campus. And so on our campus, we have early childhood from 0 to 3, and then we have pre-K to high school, and we also house Langston University on our campus. And so that is the reason why, again, we are needing 2 signs so people will know where they're going on our campus. The second variant is the height. Anyone who travels down Martin Luther King between the hours of, let's say, 6:30 to about 9 a.m., and then in the afternoon between 3 to 6, you know that where we are located, the traffic is literally backed up from Northeast 63rd to Wilshire, so that whole mile there. And so that is, again, the reason why we are asking for the variance for the height of the sign, and then the sign type. Of course, we are requesting a level 3 sign. We believe it's very important for us to send out messages and instructions to our families and those who are visiting our campus on, again, where to go to on our campus. So we need the LED level 3 sign to give proper directions to the different buildings on our campus.
Mr. Pettis, I didn't go to Millwood, so I have to object. First of all, that it's the best school in Oklahoma. But no, I have a question, probably just based on your experience. Do you know why the code doesn't account for school districts in residential areas so that school districts don't have to keep coming here?
You know,
feel
this
free.
is something that, when I was councilman, this is something that, when it came to issues like this, like,
Yeah.
what, why, and so that's something that I believe that the council, along with the state legislators need to address as well, because this property is zoned R1. So with it being zoned R1, we are very much limited into what we can have, such as signs, on our property.
Yeah, oh, sure.
That would be a question for a planner, unless JJ wants to confess to being a planner. We don't have a plan.
Well, I won't go that far. But I will say that the city is right now in the midst of a sign code update. And I know they're looking at this. They're updating the entire sign code. So I expect we'll see some different regulations when it comes to universities, schools, campuses, hospitals, and that new sign code.
That was going to be my next question, if you knew that this was going to be included in the new updates for the sign code. So it sounds like they are looking at it, but ma'am, if you wanted to.
I just need to add, if you are reviewing, the other very restrictive code right now is in regards to the fascia and the amount of metal that we can put on buildings.
Yeah.
It makes absolutely no sense for schools and churches to have to spend money on brick. That just makes no sense. I'm spending good money. I thought it was because of tornadoes and other things, but it has nothing to do with it. It's all aesthetic.
Yeah.
And so we spend a ton of money putting a ton of brick on buildings just because of how we're zoned. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think a normal business will, a normal business will try to put, not a normal, but some businesses will try to put up a cheap building. But for a school, I agree, there should probably be some kind of special accommodation. And primarily, I ask, and it always bothers me that I don't think they waive the application fee for you all, and you're spending your time and money to come here to get pretty. I know, I don't have that power, but I wish I did, and I think the city can revisit the sign code here for schools, hospitals, universities, for that reason, because it doesn't make a lot of sense for you to spend your time and the application fee and the fee to prepare these packets on something that should pretty obviously be already be accounted for in the code. So a little venting there, but I thought I'd pick your brain since you were a council member. So, any questions, comments?
I don't completely disagree, but, being that it's in an R1 district, I mean, some of the consideration just may be that there's residential a lot closer. So keeping the aesthetic a little bit nicer, keeping the brightness of signs down if there's homes right across the street. I mean, I can see the logic. It may be a little too restrictive, but I can see for purposes of this application, I think you meet the statutory conditions. But in general, I can see how that may have been a code. The reasoning behind the code.
And for us, we believe in being good partners, and so we met with the nearby property owners as well as the neighborhood association. We're very actively involved in the different neighborhood associations that are a part of Millwood School District. Matter of fact, we open up our doors for the neighborhood associations to meet, but I definitely understand where you are coming from.
Yeah, I wouldn't advocate for a sort of free-for-all for schools, but I do think they could sort of expand the parameters that schools can work within, and then they wouldn't have to come here. But I don't have anyone else signed up to speak. Is anyone else hoping to speak on this application? Okay. Board members, questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve all the variance requests in case number 15079 for the reason that they meet the statutory conditions for variances. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Item number 7, case 15082, request for special exception of Shelby Stevens to allow a mobile home to serve as temporary second dwelling at 4529 Buchanan Place.
Good afternoon. I'm Kaylee Coleman. I am Shelby Stevens' fiance. He's back there with our kids.
Okay, if you want to just give us maybe an overview of this application.
So we are his parents. They have lived on the 10 acres for the last 20 plus years. And they have, sorry, I'm looking at it. They have their home, they have a mobile home on 5 acres, and we are requesting to build our home on the other 5 acres. The problem that we have ran into is there's a single wide trailer. Robert Jordan is, his parents have taken care of him for the last 20 years. He's disabled. He lives there and they take care of him. Their health is declining. His mom has had an open heart surgery and his dad has had stents put into his heart. So with their health declining, we are trying to move closer to them so we can also take care of them and take care of Robert. So we are building a home on, I think we had the surveyor do a 1.5 acres at the front of the 5 acres that we're building our home on, or trying to.
Did you get a chance to review the protest letter?
I did, from the HOA president, yes.
Do you want to comment on that?
I do. So from what I was understanding is it looks like he may be misunderstanding that we're not putting a mobile home on the property. We're doing a medical hardship backwards. The mobile home has been there at the very back of that 5 acres for over 20 years, and Robert has resided there. And so we are actually going to be building a home, not a mobile home, on the front of that 5 acres. And so I think that that was his only issue
I've
with
got you,
it
sir.
that I saw.
I've got you signed up, sir. I'll call on you in just a moment. Maybe I should have asked before the meeting, but JJ, do you have any clarification on this one for me? Because it seems like, well, I'll let you speak, but.
Well, no, like she said, it's usually you're coming in requesting a to put a mobile home on the property to care for a relative. But in this case, the individuals already live on in a mobile home on the property.
So how is that permitted right now?
Just as a residential home
And then,
on a 10-acre tract.
okay, so at some point, are they going to need a lot split or something, or what?
No. No, they're asking for a second dwelling.
Eventually, the mobile home will be gone, right?
Yes. Yeah, Robert is in his, I think he's in his late 50s, if I'm correct. So, you know, I don't know how long he will live, but obviously me and my fiance will outlive him. So when he does decease, we will be removing it. But we will, you know, there can only be one homestead per 5 acres. And so we're just asking to build our home with that mobile home still there so we can care for him. And then, of course, so our house would be at the front, and then the mobile home would be in the middle, and then his parents are on the other side of that, 10 acres total. And so we need to care for his parents as well as Robert.
Okay. Do you have a comment, or did JJ answer it or address it?
He pretty much answered it. It sounds like they're just doing it in advance because to make the mobile home the temporary home and building a permanent house there. So
Yeah.
they just don't want to get caught in a situation where he doesn't have a place to live.
Yeah, the existing house there threw me off a little bit, but I guess knowing where it's situated, it makes more sense now. But I guess we can still look at this image, but for the house that's going to be built, what roads are they going to use? It looked like there was not a road on one of these photos, and the protest is concerned that you're going to be using their private road.
We would like to use Homestead Road because that would make sense to just come off of Homestead Road and make our driveway and be directly at the front of our house, because our house would be facing Homestead Road, so it would make sense to use that road. Worst case, we can use his parents' road, which is Sudic. I'm looking at it and I'm trying to find.
And it looked like it was paved all the way.
Yes, right there. So we could just, where it already turns, we could just add more gravel and take it back that direction. So we did not use their road if that was, they just absolutely did not use their road, but we do not mind paying HOA dues and also, caring for it.
Yeah, they were concerned that even just moving the mobile home would potentially cause damage to their private road. The mobile home's obviously already there,
Right.
we know now, but
in
building a
the-
new home is gonna be even more burdensome on that road than moving a mobile home one time.
I understand that. And in the event that, we do remove the mobile home, we can take it from Sudic. So we don't use our private road to remove it when that time comes.
Okay. Board members, any questions or comments?
I have a question. Maybe
ahead.
I'm just not understanding this. Does the need for the special exception application exist because there's already that other home on there? Okay, so this isn't premature in advance of, it's because there's already another home on there.
Well, they don't need it for the existing setup. Like right now, they don't need it, but because they're putting a new home on that other 5 acres, now they need a special exception, if that makes sense.
But it doesn't exist yet, correct?
The new home does not, no.
Okay.
It's not built
In
yet.
the process of being built.
Right.
Has it been started?
We have the financial approval. We just need this approval to start breaking ground.
Which I guess they could build it anyway, they just have to kick that guy off the land. Without the medical hardship, they'd have to move the trailer and then they could put the house there and I think they'd be fine. But if they want the trailer there and the new house, they need a special
I might be
exception.
splitting hairs here, but I'm just wondering if, does the application is necessary even though the house doesn't exist yet? At the conclusion of building the
Oh,
home,
no,
now
no,
you
no.
have a home.
That's one of the questions I asked JJ. It's not, they don't need it for the current configuration, right? Yeah. Right. For the one home that's on the other 5 acres, and then the mobile home that's on wherever it is, they don't need it in that configuration, but if they're gonna put a new home in this other 5 acres, then they're gonna need a special exception
Even though it's not built yet.
before they can build it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I know we really can't do anything about that road, but
I mean, we can consider it. I mean, we don't have to approve, if, that can be a consideration for the special exception. I mean, some of the conditions that we have to find, that it shall not adversely affect the use of neighboring properties and elements like that. I mean, we can consider those things. We can't enforce private arrangements or anything, but we can consider the impact that this would have on the surrounding properties.
One question I had is the comment from the utilities department says there's no water or wastewater services available. If it's been there all this time, what's been used?
His parents have the other 5 acres.
Got it. Okay.
And so we can, if we would like to, tap into their septic. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Or we can put our own septic and own electric. But there is a street that has, to the west, there is a commercial building, and then there's our land, and then next to that is there's like goats and chickens, and then there's like a homestead a little bit behind it. So there is electricity out there because that road does have homes on it, as you can see.
I guess your question, what's the trailer using now?
Right.
What's the mobile home using now? So what are they using now?
septic, right?
What are they using for electricity at Roberts? OEC.
And then,
So is that just,
And when we spoke to the surveyor, they said, if we did try to build first, what could potentially happen is we build that house, and then they say you can only have one homestead per 5 acres, and they turn off the electricity to Robert's home, and we did not want that to happen. So that's why we're trying to do it, unfortunately, backwards, because we don't, in the event that we build our home and that's like, okay, this is where now we have to have the electricity ran to, we don't want them to turn off Robert's electricity.
yeah, that makes sense. I think the reverse nature of this is what has caused
it's
some
unique.
confusion. Because, I mean, I think even confused the utilities department, which is what Mr. Barr was talking about. There's a comment in here that says you might need to contact DEQ if you're gonna get a permit, to get a permit to use the septic. But if the medical, or if the mobile home's already there, apparently this utilities department didn't understand the application either, because it's already there, it already tapped into
Correct.
septic. So, does that answer your question? Hopefully that answers.
Yeah,
Fine.
as long,
Okay.
Okay.
It's unique, we understand, that's why we wanted to come and talk to you guys and break it down as best as we could.
Okay.
can I just ask, because one of the conditions for approval is that we have to find that there's adequate utility and whatnot. So the comment from the utilities department, that's where I was like, want to clarify.
That's true. Okay, we'll call you back up, but we've got one person signed up to speak. And then
Okay,
we'll call
thank
you.
you.
Back up. Thank you. Clint Regal.
Hello, how are you?
Good, are you?
I'm well. So this is a little different than what the mailer we received from the city that said they would be locating a temporary mobile home. From my understanding, for a temporary medical hardship, it'd be 1, 2, or 3 years is typically what those are approved for. And the only reason why this came to our attention is because we have that private road that is owned by the members of the Homestead Homeowners Association and maintained by them. And we were worried that they were trying to use that. And it sounds like that actually was our intent, and not just on a temporary basis, but on a permanent basis. We have allowed people that used to access their home off of Buchanan and Suddick into our homeowners association. They approached us and we voted on it and they became members and part of the HOA. And that's never been done to us. This is an entirely new situation. I will say that I don't know that I agree when they say 5 acres or a 10-acre tract. I believe it's technically 2 5-acre tracts, not 1 10-acre tract. And they're trying to build at the very low point, which does create issues for septic. Also off of 104th Street, that's OEC service. Off of Homestead Road, that's OG&E. I don't know if there's any issues with those 2 utilities being served in the same property. So our concern is that the rules from the letter we seen have completely changed, from a temporary residence at that location to a permanent residence. And it sounds like their intent without notifying us was to use our road. I'm not saying we're completely against it. It's something I have to take to the membership and get their voting on or whatever. But we haven't been afforded that opportunity.
Yeah, I understand, and it's very unusual.
And as far as a medical
Application.
hardship, we don't have a defined timeline, 1, 2, or 3 years. How long is it gonna?
There will
Well,
be. There
this
will be
would
by the
be,
end of this.
this would be for 3 years,
But what
maximum.
happens if it needs to be longer than?
They have to come back
Come back.
every 3 years. But that's just for the mobile home. And so to your point, you sort of read this application probably as we did, as a mobile home going on there, and
It
that's
says
it.
it's good,
And
yeah.
now
When I
you're
called-
sort of
When I
learning.
called the city, they told me it's temporary, 1, 2, or 3 years. And
Yeah.
and so that's why, when I wrote my objections, it was
Right.
really to the point that it was a mobile home.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and you may have a new round of objections, and the HOA might have a new round of objections with the house being there instead of a mobile home. I don't know.
Our HOA covenants does not allow a mobile home in our, it will on a very temporary basis, like during the course of construction. From this track, not the one immediately to the east, but east of that, there's a home that used to be accessed off Buchanan Place, and now they're a member of the Homestead Homeowners Association. They lived in a mobile home, and they approached us about becoming a membership there. We voted on it and allowed it only because they were building a new home, which you can see is there. It meets the requirements of the covenants, and as soon as they were done, within a month, they moved the mobile home. So,
Yeah.
our concern is just, if we have membership, it could actually be detrimental to our property values and things like that. That's the whole point of HOAs and their covenants is. So.
Okay.
I guess I'm not sure why they couldn't build a home closer to Buchanan Place if that was an issue. Because it seems very presumptuous to be able to use a road that is adequately marked and clearly marked as private. We have a sign that says owned and maintained by the Homestead Homeowners Association at the very beginning of the road.
So,
I guess I'll tell you sort of the difficulty I have is we can't enforce HOA, rules. We can't enforce any kind of private covenants or anything like that. But as I mentioned earlier, we can consider that, and we can consider the impact on the neighboring
well,
properties.
and using that road at that point in time is on one of our members' property, doesn't that fall into trespassing?
It might, I don't know.
And I'm not saying we're not open to letting them in,
Right,
it's just, this is
right.
a whole, this thing completely changed from what it originally was.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I'm a bit concerned now, if it's just placing a mobile home, maybe using your road one time, I could maybe look past that, but that's a little different than bringing in heavy equipment and building a new house, presumably using your road, your private road. And so that gives me some hesitation as well.
We would want no use of that road until if, let's say, we voted and allowed them in to be members, which, again, we're not opposed to it, I just have to take it to my membership as a vote because it's a new development. We would not want them to use that road to access that during construction, because we do have 2 culverts that I really don't know what they're rated for as far as if they're going to bring dozers in there or whatever other type of equipment they might be using, so.
Okay. Board members, any questions or comments?
Just a quick comment. Because I did hear the young lady say that they would be willing to pay HOA fees, and I also heard her mention that we would be willing to use an alternative road as well.
Yeah, and I heard those too, and that's why I said, I'm not saying we wouldn't allow them into the membership, we would just want them to meet the requirements of the current HOA covenants, which I realize is outside of the city authority. But it's something we have to vote on.
And please forgive me for making the statement, but because I keep hearing you use the word allow, and I just would hate for them not to be allowed in the event that that information is not shared, that they would be willing to join as members and that they would be willing to use an alternative road.
Right, and so I don't have the authority to grant it without a voting of my membership.
I understand, but I just want to make sure that,
Okay.
that information is disseminated to the rest of the members in the event it comes up.
Yeah,
Yeah, and what he's saying also too is their covenants don't allow the second dwelling in mobile home. So
Yes.
if they were to join the HOA, they would already be in violation of the covenants just
That's
by
exactly
Because
right.
of that,
Yeah,
yes.
And that's,
Right.
there's
And
not
the only
really
reason why I
anything
say
to do with
allow is because it is a private property that road is on. I
Right.
mean, it's not even mine. The person who owns it allows me to drive on it just because we're part of the HOA and it's set up for the members of those properties, so.
I'll tell you one other concern while we got you up here, I guess, is that we can't really stop them from building the house. I don't think. I don't know of any.
Well, you can because you have to allow the variance.
Well, but if we denied the application,
Well, the
they
medical,
could still build the house, and then they just would have to move the mobile home. So that's why I'm saying we can't really stop them from building the house if
Correct.
they wanted to build the house, but they would have to move the trailer somewhere else, the mobile home somewhere else. And so I'm trying to sort of work within our authority of the board into coming to a solution here, knowing that, if they do want to build the house and they avoid this private drive, they can do that, and then you still have a hardship. And I also want some cohesiveness among the neighbors, and so
Sure.
I'm trying to work through that. So these are all the things that are going through my mind that
I've lived there 19 years. I've never had any issues with any of the people that live around me.
Yeah.
I've had some interactions, not necessarily with Mr. Stevens, but, other members there. Like I said, we've even allowed 2 5-acre tracts that used to be accessed from Buchanan Place into our HOA. We're not opposed to it.
Right.
We're just, but we also would appreciate if we were approached with it instead of the assumption that they could.
Yeah, and the, it's not always lawyers that fill out the applications. And so it looks like, well, I don't say it looks like, the scope of the application is vastly different from what I thought that it was and what you thought that it was.
Yes.
I think. And so I think after this, maybe with some consultation with the HOA,
I would
maybe
be
it's-
happy to talk to those
maybe
people.
we can sort through something. Yeah, okay.
Today's the first day I've ever seen them. I won't, you know.
Right.
And I hope there's no hard feelings with me about this. It
Yeah,
just-
and I don't think they just thought that they could build it. They came here before building it, which was the proper thing to do and all that, which some people don't, and they
Right.
come here asking for forgiveness. So they came here first, they did the right thing.
Sure, I agree with you.
And everyone has received notice, and, well, as required by the code, those people received notice, and someone got notice and notified you, and that's why you're here. So that process worked, but I don't think I have any other questions for you. I do have some questions for the applicant, though.
Okay.
Do you have any other comments before you
No,
go?
it,
Okay.
like I said, it completely changed my entire mindset when I got here and actually heard the situation. You know.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound confrontational. It's just
Right.
like I'm kind of brainstorming as I'm talking, so.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Anyways, all right.
Understood.
Okay, well, I appreciate y'all's time.
Thank you. Okay, it's Ms. Stevens, right?
In a month.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
I'll tell you kind of where I am. I don't know where the rest of the board is, but it seems to me that, I mean, I have a lot of open questions on this one, and I think those questions, I hate to hold up the project, but I think the questions could be answered by discussions with the HOA and the surrounding properties. And I think you guys could come to some kind of agreement that would get rid of any protest or objection to your application. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but that's kind of where I am. I think maybe having them consult, and if they can't come to an agreement, then you can come back and we have a difficult decision to make. And if you can come to an agreement, I think it makes the decision a little bit easier on us. But I think that's kind of where I am. I don't know about the rest of the board, but.
I may not be viewing this in the appropriate way, so correct any board members, or JJ, correct me if I'm wrong, but the application before us is to grant or not a special exception for this medical hardship,
Yes,
correct?
yes,
Okay.
but in order to grant that, they're going to build a new house, which is a little bit different from
But
what we
completely
normally-
outside the purview of what we're, have to consider.
It all goes into an analysis that we have to do of the benefits, the detriments, all
Right,
of that.
this is just my point of view right now, with the information that we have. Looking at the statutory conditions and the zoning ordinance requirements, it seems to me that potentially number 4, where is this creating additional vehicular traffic that's not in accordance with the existing neighborhood, which sounds like a primary complaint with the road usage, but you've stated you're fine in an access using Buchanan Road, which is not that private road, correct?
We would be using Sudic
Or
to
sorry,
get to ours.
Sudic,
Yes.
a different road that's not their HOA private road.
Correct.
And again, I'm just looking at the conditions here and the things that we're to consider. If that's the case, that seems to take that one out in my view. But so then what else are we, I guess I'm just concerned with why are we putting so much emphasis on the building of the house?
Well,
And their concerns about what road they'd be using if they're building a house. They've said they could use the Sudic Road that's,
because the presentation started with the presumption that they were going to be using this private road. That's what they said, that's what they started out saying. Well, we think we're going to use that road.
That would
and
be
then
our
they said-
preference. It would
Right.
make sense to use
Right.
Homestead.
And I think there might be a universe in which they could get the permission to use that private road. The HOA president just doesn't know yet what his HOA thinks about that. And if they could, it alleviates a substantial hardship on them if they're able to use that road. I just think there's a lot of agreements that they could come to, and they can come with this complete package to us, and we could say, okay, fine. Otherwise, frankly, I would want a prohibition against using that private road if we were gonna grant anything.
I think that's my point that I'm getting at, is that it sounds like you would be, I guess, okay with that. Maybe you're not. Maybe you want the opportunity to talk to them, but if what we're considering is a special exception for a medical hardship, again, you'd have to come back in 3 years and, where
Right.
this analysis is done again.
Right.
But if you're okay with that, if we put that condition on there and that doesn't hold anything up as far as them building their house, they're using a road that's not managed by the HOA or belonging to them.
Sure, but an issue is if they would rather use that road, I mean, if they, in
Yeah.
a year, if someone uses that road, they're in violation of the special exception
Yep.
now. You know, there's just a way I think that we can alleviate any of these lingering questions.
Yeah.
Is there any way that we could agree to use SUDIC right now as an exemption, and then me and him can converse after, and I can speak to the homeowners association, and if we agree, is that something that we can get notarized and bring forth to you guys to let you know they did say yes, we can use Homestead Road?
So I thought about that, but the problem would be we would have to come back here and I think get another special exception from us or something to get around that condition, because what we'd have granted in that point is that you can't use that private road. And so I don't know if they could just amend that or come back and file a new application to get around that, but
Could we
The
say
use-
unless there's an agreement? I mean, that could be the condition.
The
that
use
they're
of the
not-
private road is a civil matter.
Right.
We have no
Right.
dog in that fight. So you
Right.
could approve the special exception as is, and then it's up to them to agree to, or not agree, to use that road or not.
yeah, no, that's why I'm saying I wouldn't be comfortable granting or supporting the application, knowing that they might or might not use that road. That's the whole point of the protest, because I don't think that meets this element about the impact on the neighboring properties, an adverse impact on the neighboring properties. So,
And the building permit process, they're gonna ask for your, what access you're gonna take for your, where's that gonna be, so.
We'll give them a driveway on either road.
Right, but if the HOA doesn't, it's a private road, so, if they don't allow it, you can't put a road there. You gotta use the SUDIC anyways, but.
yeah.
There has been a home in the last 10 years built, and that road was used. They did put a temporary mobile home on there until their home was built. And so it has been done, and there is at least, I think, I could be mistaken, but I think there's at least 10 homes that do use Homestead Road to access their driveways. And so it's been done before, and so I'm hoping that the HOA won't bucket us doing it as well, because it has been used in the past.
Okay.
And
You know, heavy
I
equipment.
think the protesters' point to that, though, is that it was done by agreement, right?
Absolutely.
They were approached, they agreed, they had all the information. And so again, I don't discount what the protester is saying, or
Absolutely.
I completely appreciate that. I'm just looking at what's before us right here. Have the ability or not to grant with conditions, deny.
Right.
Whatever action we want to take, or not want to, but consider appropriate. So anyway, I don't, for the record, I don't discount what the protester's saying. And to your point that it's been done before, I think it was done by agreement and working
Absolutely.
with the HOA. And I think maybe that's what our chairman is getting at, is that there may be a way to do this where you guys work this out ahead of time, and then when you come back here and ask for this medical exception, there isn't any protest, and we can feel more comfortable addressing the conditions that there's not going to be adverse effect to the surrounding properties and whatnot, because there's a lot of things that we have to consider in the statute and ordinance. So
Absolutely. We were told this was the first step to take, so we had no idea who to reach out to or anything of that nature. It was just,
What if we don't use the road at all, though, or like if it's just out of the equation, if we just use SUDIC, would that stop it today from happening, or?
So why I'd like to get to some agreement on this at some point is so that, again, in a year, if someone says it's going to save a lot of time if I just take this private road, and then the HOA gets mad and you end up with this dispute, and all of this is because we didn't resolve it on the front end here, when we could potentially resolve it here. So that's what I'm trying to avoid. And so, I understand your point, and Mr. Barr's made this point too. It's would we just approve it and then let the chips fall where they may? I'd rather, if we can, get as much as we can resolved now so that there are no issues and everything is cohesive going forward. So I know Mr. Riggle has hand up too, so maybe he's had a new thought or something. So I'll call him up for just a second, and then we'll bring you back up. And you can sit right here in this front row if you guys want, and we'll bring you back up.
okay, thank you.
The only thing I was going to say is I've lived there 19 years, and there has not been a mobile home driven on our road. It's against our covenants. When I mentioned that there was that our membership voted to allow an existing property that was accessed off of Buchanan Place, that currently had a mobile home to build a new home and access it from Homestead Road. When they removed that mobile home, they took it through Buchanan Place. So it's that, and there's only 6 homes on our street, not any more than that, so just for clarification.
Yeah, and again, I think that road will get pretty beat up, potentially pretty beat up. I don't know what the condition or what standards it's built to, but, heavy
Right.
equipment takes its toll on roads.
I wasn't part of it when they built it either, so I really don't know.
Yeah.
I could say more. And I'm really not trying to cause y'all problems. I hope you realize that, so.
Okay.
That's why I said I'd talk to y'all afterwards.
My-
Okay.
My comment would be that it's probably in their best interest to get together and try to work it out in advance. And also, I'm assuming that their property is subject to the covenant, or the restriction on mobile homes that he's talking about. You'd have to look at the title to determine that. But assuming that that's the case, then they would probably want to get some agreement on building the mobile home.
So the other thing, is it a 10-acre tract?
Yeah,
Are you going to have it resited down to
everything would be done the right way.
to 5? Okay, because that would, impact a little bit, because that existing mobile home would have an impact. I guess it's your father lived in.
Yeah, it's the guy my dad takes care of.
Okay, well, no, on the other 5 acres, I guess.
Yeah.
Does your dad
Yeah.
live in that? Is it a?
It's on 104th and Seward.
Okay, yeah. So, anyways.
Okay, well,
But I know this is a minimal thing, and I'm in building design. If you, the house is going to face the way they intended. They want it to face to the north for that access, or they want it to face to the south for that access.
right.
That's one thing that would need to be worked out too, just for that, because that's going to impact your layout of where your septic's going to be, where your sewer, your well's going to be, and things like that. So, just a little thing that needs to be worked out before. The access would need to be worked out before you site the building, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, again, it's sort of a unusual application, an unusual application. From my perspective, if this were the normal case of putting a mobile home, I think that would be one thing, but building a new house is a totally other thing, and it's very permanent in a way that a mobile home is not. And then also, we always like to think about, of course, there's a chance that they could meet all these elements, but if we cram this through and it creates years of disputes and litigation and, whatever, but all that can be avoided potentially by talking a couple of times. That's my preference. So I currently don't support it. I would be in favor of continuance. I can't think of a bunch of conditions I would want to put on this, and then they'd have to come back. I can't support it right now, but I'm also one board member and I could be outvoted. So if you had some final comments, and then we need to move on to other applicants.
I understand that you don't want any issues with the other neighbors. Me and my fiance are not.
Yeah, you
we're not
don't
going to
either.
buck up at that.
Yeah.
We're at the mercy of our house caught on fire, and so building right now was not the plan. It was a plan in about a year, so it became urgent when we had to move our 3 kids into a hotel. So that's why we're not scrambling, but trying to figure out the best way. And this was the first step that we were told to take, and we wanted to do everything right and do everything the correct way in the proper time that we could. So we don't mind using Sudic. That's his parents' drive. We don't mind using that to get to our house. We just want to be able, we've got the financial means to build.
Yeah, but we've got the other issue of the mobile home potentially being in violation of the covenants, and
I understand that.
there's just a bunch of little issues that all together, I think, maybe you don't resolve all of them, but I think a lot of them can be resolved. And so again, I hate to hold up projects, but
Good.
that's kind of where I
Like
am.
it in theory, just with the lot, right?
That's what I thought they were doing, but
Right,
apparently
yeah.
not.
Might be easy.
Can I make one comment based on what you just said?
Okay.
And what she said? If they access it from Sudic, then it doesn't fall in our covenants HOA. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay.
And so it wouldn't be necessarily a concern of ours. I wasn't opposed to the second mobile home going on the property. It was just the access to it, because
Okay.
it wasn't part of our HOA. It's outside of our privy.
Okay.
So, and then I just want to speak on y'all's behalf of that.
Okay. Well, I mean, if the representative of the HOA doesn't think that it's an issue as long as they don't use that private access road. You guys can come back here
just say
if
that.
you ever do want to use that. I mean, I would think that we would put a condition that says it's approved on the condition that they don't use that private access road or something. And then if they ever want access, they can come back here. I think these applications are not quite as expensive as some of the other ones, so it's not the end of the world if you have to come back here. What does the board think about that idea? To be approval on the condition that they don't use that private access road.
Yeah, I mean, this will be my final comment, so we can move on, but I mean, I feel like you guys have been made aware of some of the potential concerns that moving forward that could occur if, as the applicant, you still want to move forward and you're okay with this condition of not using that, then you guys just need to understand there could potentially be other things that you're gonna have to deal with that may come before this board or somewhere else. But you're the applicant, this is your property, you know, if we can find that it meets the statutory conditions, then and you're okay with us voting on that now, then, I would support the application with that condition. I would just further say, again, to avoid some of these things in the future, that condition say you only use SUDIC unless there's a private agreement otherwise, because you guys may at some point decide to be part of the HOA or whatever, and we wouldn't, to avoid you having to come back here or, work around the variance and the conditions on the variance, then, that's a potential solution.
Yeah, we get into an enforceability issue. There probably already is one with a condition and then a condition upon a condition, but I'm okay with that if that's what you want to do, and I'd support that. So, and if they have a private agreement, they would technically not be in violation of the special exception if they had a private agreement. So no one could say anything. So I could get on board with something like that. Okay.
I just have one quick question.
Okay.
Throughout all this conversation, so Mr. Robert lives in the mobile home that's currently on the property, correct?
Correct.
From what I'm hearing, that's the mobile home that we're voting on today, is that correct?
Sort of.
Or, let me just say this, because I heard you say that you're wanting to build. Are you also planning on moving a mobile home on that property while you build?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm good. I just wanted to make sure I understood
Yeah,
correctly
okay.
too.
Makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak. Was anyone else hoping to speak on this application? Seeing none. Questions, comments, or a motion?
I would move approval of case number 15082 with the condition that the applicants not use
Homestead Road.
Homestead Road for purposes of accessing the property unless there's an agreement, private agreement otherwise that allows you to do so. And I would approve this for a period of 3 years.
I second.
Maybe add written agreement?
Yeah.
Just to be lawyerly?
Private written agreement otherwise.
Thank you.
You get too many lawyers on one board and start getting a bunch of qualifiers and adjectives. Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15082 for a period of 3 years on the condition that Homestead Road will not be used unless there's a written agreement permitting access. Did that accurately reflect your motion, Ms. Ybarra?
Yes.
Okay. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved. All right.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Item 8 is case 14960, special exception of Jennifer Query to allow home sharing at 3232 Northwest 43rd.
Hi, Jennifer Query. This is requesting a home sharing license for 3232 Northwest 43rd Street. I just wrote a quick statement because I get really nervous, so I'm just collecting my thoughts. My husband and I chose Oklahoma as a location to invest in real estate. We just recently relocated here. We've seen growth and revitalization efforts happening all over the metro area, so we believed Oklahoma City to be the next up-and-coming travel destination. This home currently serves as our temporary residence for a family of 5. Since we just relocated here, we are having a home built in Edmond that'll be completed within I chose to buy a single-family home outside of the downtown urban core so that I wouldn't attract the younger, more party crowd. I also wanted to be in a location that wasn't already saturated with other rentals. We plan to also use this home to host our out-of-state family and friends when they come to visit, so I specifically wanted a home that was more conducive for families and traveling professionals. Couple things about the home. In order to ensure that we attract trustworthy and respectful guests, criteria that must be met prior to guests being allowed to book. This includes requiring a profile photo, verified email address, phone number, government-issued ID. I also check potential guests' prior host ratings before I approve any booking. Guests are also required to read and agree to house rules prior to booking, and these rules include several prohibited activities such as no smoking, illegal substances, no pets allowed, no parties, things like that. We are also able to monitor the home with 2 security cameras that we have on site. We have a Ring doorbell and a Ring floodlight motion sensor camera mounted above our garage. I monitor the cameras daily and also to ensure that they're not allowing unregistered guests to stay overnight and that the occupancy matches what the guest declared upon booking. I've given both of my neighbors on either side of me my personal contact information. They know that they can call or text me anytime if there's an issue. I have a cleaning crew that comes into the home after each guest stay and also reports on the condition of the home. They ensure the safety of the home by making sure appliances are turned off and that the home is secure when they leave. Lastly, I just wanted to address any potential opposition from neighbors or the board regarding the issuance of a short-term rental or having a rental in the neighborhood. I just wanted to assure anybody who may oppose the issuance of a license that I have a vested interest to maintain the most appealing house on the block, and I would also argue that I bring great value to not only the neighborhood but to the city by allowing my home to accommodate the increased level of tourism, which in turn benefits the city by way of occupancy taxes remitted on my behalf.
All right, I appreciate your
Thank you.
comments. It sounds like you might have watched a couple of our proceedings
Just trying
before.
to throw it all out there.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate it. That answers a lot of the questions I think that the board might have had, so so that's good. I think that the area you're in, you're a little bit west of the concentrated areas. So that, I know your comments address that, so that works in your favor, I think. There's, of course, at least one on 42nd Street, based on our packet. And there might be others, but in my knowledge of this area, and I've researched all these before, didn't seem like there were that many in this area, so that works in your favor. Board members, any questions or comments?
I didn't see in the application where it said the number of guests. Did I miss that?
The maximum we allow is 7. It's a 3-bedroom, so 7 guests is the maximum.
Is there any interest in lowering that to 6 among the board? Or is the board okay with 7?
Is there like a bunk bed situation or what?
Oh, I just listed the couch as a place to sleep. We had a request for an extra person to stay, and I'm like, okay, you can use the couch. I would prefer not to use the couch, but I allowed 7.
Yeah, so sometimes we'll put a condition, as you probably know, but we'll put a condition on the number of guests that you advertise to, just as a sort of disincentive for larger groups. And then if someone happens to have 7, it's not the end of the world, but you're advertising it as 6.
Yeah.
And so
That's not a problem.
Okay. That's something I was thinking of for this one, but other than that, I don't know that. I mean, these streets are a little bit wider in this area than the historic districts, and so I don't know that we need to require off-street parking. Any questions or comments? Okay, I don't have anyone signed up to speak. Is anyone else hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant?
10 years.
I was thinking 2 years on this one, but open to other ideas, but was thinking 10, or not 10, 2, because
Put it in your head.
just, I think the council is going to reconsider this here pretty soon at some point, and then also this area, I mean, we're just getting very concentrated in certain parts of the city. Not so much this area, but if we keep granting them, it will be at some point. So shorter period of time allows us to revisit these in a shorter amount of time. So I was thinking 2 years, but I also can't make a motion. So questions, comments, or a motion?
Make a motion that just the one condition on the advertised
Maximum
6
of
guests.
6.
Okay. Motion to approve special exception, case number 14960, with the condition that the property be advertised as 6 guest maximum for a period of 2 years.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 14960 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 2 years and on the condition that it'll be advertised as a maximum of 6 guests. Once you're able to, cast your votes.
Thank you.
It's approved. Thank you.
Item 9 is case 15059, special exception of Rebecca Avey to allow home sharing at 2332 Northwest 16th Street.
The applicant present? Okay. Is this the applicant that had several?
Yeah.
Okay. We will, well, I guess maybe she doesn't represent all of them. So we'll put this one, this is number 9, to the end of the agenda.
9 through 12
Okay.
and 16 are hers.
Yeah, it's on behalf of someone else. I thought maybe the other person would be here. So is the applicant present for item 10? This is 3920 Northwest 19th Street. Item 11. Okay, anyone that has Rebecca Avey representing them, are they present in her absence? Okay, we'll put all of her items at the end of the agenda
Okay,
and move on.
that will take us to item 13, case 15063, special exception of John Hunziker to allow home sharing at 2737 Northwest 20th.
Hello, John Hunsucker. I'm with Doorbell Investments, 600 West Sheridan Avenue, Oklahoma City. I also have item 14 on the docket also, which is me individually. It's not through Doorbell. It's me individually. I don't have a partner on that one. Basically, we're asking for a special exception on the 20th Street property. It is designed to sleep 4 people. It's a 2-bedroom. We made the decision not to put in a sleeper sofa or anything like that. We don't want to overuse the property. It does have off-street parking with a long driveway. We plan on having quiet hours from 10 to 8, no parties. We're not going to allow one-night stays or local guests without prior approval. Getting ready for this, I've been on several Facebook host sites, and there are a lot of nightmares out there, but also a lot of good tips on how to avoid parties, and one-night stays and locals are a good way to have parties. We're going to put a Ring camera in. Both my partner and I live locally. My partner's a general contractor, so taking care of the property is not an issue. I think that's all I have on that one.
So did you have a chance to review the protest letter?
I have not seen it. We actually sent an email this morning asking for one and didn't get one in response, so no, I've not seen it.
Okay, I don't have anyone signed up to speak, but was anyone hoping to be heard on this application? Okay, well, I'll let them, before I call you up, I'll let them address their comments, and then I'll bring you back to address those comments. But before you go, board members, do we have any questions or comments of the applicant?
I have one. There's a piece of this application that says to provide the addresses of other home sharing properties that are associated with you in any way. And your response was through yourself that, so altogether associated with you in any way, how many properties do you have?
That are short-term rentals, just these 2.
Okay, so whether through Doorbell or through John Hunsucker?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. We have one in Nowata. My partner and I own a multi-unit family company. We own 35 doors, these are the only two that we're using, that we're looking at short-term rental. We have one in Nowata, Oklahoma that we're considering doing the same with.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. I guess I'll let you, I was going to ask you about the protest, but it looks like we're getting you a copy, and then we'll call up the protestant, and then we'll bring you back up here so you can address all of it at once. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if you wanted to just come and give an overview of your comments, I think, since he hasn't had a chance to review them yet. And we might have some questions for you as well, but. And I know I actually have one question for you, so.
All right. Lizzie B. on behalf of the concerned residents of Crestwood listed at the end of the letter. And our overall concern is that there are way too many of these home share properties in our neighborhood. We were excited early on. We thought people were fixing them up so families could move in, but nobody ever moved in. And it's an issue, as we outlined in our letter. Especially Beverly's house. Again, nothing against Mr. Hunsaker or Doorbell specifically, but Beverly was a great neighbor. And it would be really sad to have Beverly's house no longer have any neighbors in it. She contributed to the neighborhood, and it would just be a void. So available to answer any questions about any of our research on the extensive home shares in and around the Crestwood area.
Yeah, I appreciated your research that you provided. And Cindy, if you have Airbnb pulled up, can we throw this address in there? And then while she's doing that, were you also protesting the next application, 21st Street?
No, we were only informed of this one, so this
Okay.
is all we did.
Maybe it's down the street quite a bit or something.
By the way, a few of our older residents ask your indulgence for not being present. The heat is a little much for them, so they were not able to get out today.
Yeah, I understand. I appreciate you taking the time to come meet with us today. We'd like to hear from the neighbors when we can, so I appreciate that.
The ones we researched and mapped were just the ones that were available on those 2 days in June that we looked at the website and then started off on our hunt.
Okay. Okay, and I know you did can you zoom in a little bit, just, I think you, with the scroll, yeah. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I did this research as well, and it did look like this area is getting pretty concentrated. I mean, and this is just on Airbnb, yeah, I mean, so, you know, not necessarily defeating the application, but it is a factor I think that we can consider when we look at concentration in these certain areas. And again, this doesn't look at VRBO, and I know your research looked at VRBO as well, and there's some additional properties on VRBO.
And most of the VRBOs were dual listings. They weren't additional properties. So
Okay.
we had the category on our spreadsheet that were dual listed.
And so one of the things we always raise with some of the protests is that City Council had the opportunity to prohibit home sharing, and they did not. And so they approved home sharing and clearly want some degree of home sharing. So I guess your issue is just there's just too much in your area,
Well, when we asked the city how many of these there already were, they provided us with 5 addresses, and we knew from experience that there were many, many more than that. So that's when we got on here to try to document for you that whether they're licensed or not, whether they have exceptions or not, there are many more of these operating than are currently. And the ordinance did allow protests for those who actually apply for an exception. But if you don't apply for a exception, we can't protest.
Yeah, if you were operating before the city council passed the ordinance, you get grandfathered in.
Actually, I don't know if you saw our spreadsheet, we color-coded them. There are only 4 on here that were operating before, and 40% of those operating on here have come on in the last 6 months.
So,
And you can tell by the ownership of them, if they weren't owned prior to 2019, then they couldn't possibly be grandfathered.
yeah, so we can look at the number of permits. Well, I'll start a step back. We can look at the number of special exceptions that we actually approve. And that's actually what Cindy just had pulled up. At least in this area, that's the number of special exceptions that we have approved. And then we can look at the number of permits, which would include anyone who has a permit but not a special exception because they've been grandfathered in. What might be showing up on Airbnb are unpermitted Airbnbs. They're just operating in violation of.
So we did our best to, in the license category of our spreadsheet, if you saw that column, probably 80% of them are completely unlicensed.
Yeah.
The 5 green ones were the ones where you had granted an exception. The 4 orange ones were ones that were probably grandfathered because they showed reviews prior to January 2019, so they were clearly operating before January 2019. But there were only 1, 2, 3 that had the licenses where they said that they were owner occupied, and one of those had expired.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like there's an enforcement issue that needs to be raised with the council.
And we did turn all of these in to the Action Center
Okay.
with the links, with the addresses.
Okay.
But this is our first opportunity to come share this information with you.
Yeah.
Because it's the first time somebody actually did the right thing, congratulations, and applied for the exception so that we got a notice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe now that the city has become aware of all the unpermitted ones, they will now come before us, and we can sort of start to keep track of them. Because that's the problem, and it's a problem that you've obviously identified, is if they don't come to us, we can't really keep track of them, other than if we see them advertising on Airbnb. So, okay, board members, questions or comments?
Not right now, thank you.
Okay, did you have any other comments? Or?
Just any questions that need to be answered.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, sir, if you wanted to address any of those comments or make any other comments?
And I've had a chance to review the objection, and although I appreciate their concerns, I do think this does become an issue of enforcement of Oklahoma City statutes. I mean, we're doing the correct thing. And when we look at the density, when you look at their map, this property, there's one other one listed, and this is their information I'm looking at. There's one located on each corner. There's nothing in that block. When you were scrolling through the other maps earlier, you could see those streets have a lot of properties on them. This isn't like 3 or 4 houses.
Right.
There's really not another short-term rental very close to this one if you go down to both corners. This particular area itself, I mean, look how many lots are listed in that block there. And there's one on each corner. So I don't know the density in this particular area is necessarily that thick. And one other thing I just wanted to address, I work downtown. I've lived in these neighborhoods. I bought my first house in Gatewood in 1994 that I lived in for many years. The other application on here that I have is actually the house next door. I moved from there to Heritage Hills East and renovated a home. I now live in Southwest Oklahoma City. Yeah, I am from Oklahoma City. I appreciate these neighborhoods. I understand these neighborhoods. It's something that, our properties, we're taking care of. We're spending money on them. We're fixing them up. Our attitude is I don't want any property that I wouldn't let my kids live in. And we're buying some stuff in some really rough areas that we're fixing up, making nice homes. So, even though we may not be living in the house, we will still be good neighbors. We will make sure the trash cans are removed each day. We know when the trash days are and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough case because the protests are, I don't know that they question whether they're going to necessarily have trouble with you or any of your renters, but their problem is they don't have neighbors there, like at all, because they're just sort of transient folks that come in from wherever. And the neighbors sort of understandably would rather have neighbors that they can get to know and watch their kids when they're not there and watch the dog when they're on vacation and come to the cookout and all of that. And so, that's a concern that we certainly try to acknowledge and address when we can, is this losing of the character of the neighborhood because it becomes a bunch of home sharing. I mean, so they have valid concerns. My struggle is, I'll just sort of be a little bit blunt here, I think that the city has failed on the enforcement side with these unpermitted Airbnbs that are operating. And potentially that is going to prejudice you if we deny your application. And so that I really struggle with. I don't know, if anyone from city staff has any ideas on what we as a board can do to get the ball rolling on enforcement of some of these things, which I think would take the picture of probably being a little bit more favorable to people who've done it the right way like you have, and coming down much harder on people who have not done it the right way. Something like that, but, so that's kind of where I am, board members. I don't know where you are, but.
Yeah, for the record, I've made these comments before. I feel like, in your opinion, this area isn't saturated because you're defining area in a different way that someone else might be. And so as the board, we have to look at that, looking at the competing interest. I think you're right. People like you that are coming in and buying up homes and redoing them and making them look nice, that's great. But you're assuming that if it was sold or a long-term rental, that they wouldn't do the same. And so I think that's where the competing interests that we have to consider, the competing interests of, the protesters and the applicant. And it's not easy, but I guess specific to this application, in my opinion, I think this area is extremely saturated. We're considering the evidence that's brought before us in this particular application, and I think that it's fair to consider whether or not they're plotted on the city map or not, they're clearly being used in that way. And
yeah, but they're saturated with unauthorized.
And I get it.
Yeah, and so does that mean he gets
Fair
punished?
to penalize, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, and you guys know I take conservative positions on most of these. In my opinion, I do think this area is, I'm looking at what we're provided by the city. There's a lot. So at what point, and it's subjective, does it begin changing the character of the neighborhood?
Is this something code enforcement could, it seems kind of, usually we're looking at, boundaries of the property that are not being complied with, but is it something code enforcement that could get on their radar?
Yes, and it sounds like if she's already turned them in, that should be on there. They should be working them.
Yeah.
But I can find out.
Okay. What's that?
There's so many more.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Yeah. It's probably, they sort of have a list of things that they look for in enforcement, and unauthorized home sharing is probably just not on that list yet, but if it's going to start being on their list, I think that can alleviate it. And then I'll feel much more comfortable denying applications like this if there's a bunch of permitted uses in the area and everyone can see that, and when they buy the property, they can see that they're buying something in a highly concentrated area, so it's sort of their fault if we deny the application. Here I struggle to come down too hard because based on the permitted home sharing, it's really not that concentrated. You know, there's one or two in the area. It's the unauthorized ones that need to be shut down and then come before us, and then we scrutinize those and come down much harder on them than we are on people who did it the right way. So that has me leaning in favor of this application, on the caveat that I am going to be the squeaky wheel that gets the grease in the city, bringing this issue of the unauthorized ones to the attention of the appropriate people and making sure something gets done with that. So
I can tell you New Orleans, because we looked at property in New Orleans, my son goes to school there, they actually, in their areas, they don't allow it. They have a city permit number, and Airbnb requires that permit number to be listed in order for them to actually list their property. And so it gives them a way to actually be able to track that and maintain that, so.
I wonder if you can just make that up, because there's something's going wrong here. Because I mean, in all of our meetings, we get a map of the home sharing permits that I think is the most current map of the home sharing permits. And it's certainly not near as complicated as that website is. So they're doing something to circumvent the requirements of the city that's very troubling. So anyway, that's kind of where I am. If I approved it, it would be for a very short period of time also, just until some of this stuff starts to get hashed out. But I don't know that I can feel comfortable denying this application on the basis that unauthorized folks are contributing to the concentration. There are other applications in here that I think even among the permitted uses, there's more concentration, but I don't know that this is one of them. Any questions, comments, or a motion?
I don't know how this vote's going to go, but I do want to say for the record, my consideration is not that it's alarming, the number of unauthorized permits. That's true. This is the one that's provided by the city, right? The one with the pink.
That is the special exceptions that we have approved.
We have approved.
That's
Okay.
not all the permits that might have been grandfathered in or anything, but that's the special exceptions.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Well, the special exceptions that we have approved or that are, I think, Cindy, pending today. I think you included the pink for the ones that are pending today. Right. So that gets factored in, yeah, to your calculation. Okay, we'll hear one more comment from the neighbor, it looks like, and then we'll bring you back up if you have any closing comments, and then we'll move on.
So again, referencing the spreadsheet, one more point of clarification. We have roughly 40 properties on here, actually a couple more. 4 are old enough to potentially be grandfathered, so let's just say that they're grandfathered. 5 are already exceptions, and 3 have the theoretically owner-occupied, but if you drive around, you find most of them are not really owner-occupied. So if you add those up, 4 plus 5 plus 3 is 12. So I don't know how many is showing up on your data, but 12 are how many we come up with that are theoretically already licensed or grandfathered by the city. So rather than whatever number you think we're working with here. And the other thing I would point out is that Airbnb and VRBO deliberately misplace the geographical locations of the numbers on their map because they don't want people to be able to identify the house and bypass them and go directly to the homeowner to make their arrangements. They want you to have to get the address from Airbnb once you've actually booked your reservation through Airbnb, so you don't actually get the address. So we did our best with we used their map because the city didn't have a map that could show us where all these were. So we used their map, but it's not, the little circles are not exactly where the houses are because Airbnb deliberately moves them off a block here, a block there, one way or another to try to confuse people about exactly where the house is, so.
Okay. Did you, Cindy, do we have the map that she provided in color? Yeah, not your map, but the one that was included in the protest. Okay. I don't know the legend here, but is there Okay, there it is on the map, okay. I'm trying to identify which ones are special exceptions on this map. I'll have to.
It's not differentiated between the special, we were identifying that they were listed, and then we had to go find what the actual address of the property was, which required scouting around and comparing the photos. And then once we had the addresses, then we could compare that to the county assessor's website and the data that the city clerk's office provided. So, but this was kind of our starting point to print out this, to kind of label them a little bit, and then see if we could find them. And there were two that we couldn't find that were shown on here, but we weren't actually able to identify what their actual addresses were because the photos were only inside the house, and we couldn't look through the windows well enough to see where they were and what the houses actually were.
It looked like F and G, at least according to your records, are special exceptions that were granted.
Let me check on my spreadsheet here.
And there's more, but that's the,
F, the address is actually technically on Ross Avenue, but basically 20th and Ross. And G is technically on 21st Street. So that's what I'm saying. It looks like it's on 20th, but it's technically on 21st because Airbnb moves things around. So that's why I'm saying it's roughly in the right area, but not exactly.
yeah, okay. Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you. If you wanted to address any comments, if not, the board can just deliberate.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. So Cindy, if you'll go back to your map. Okay, so at least as far as special exceptions go, I mean, that's what we're working with. And I don't know, I didn't see any other permitted ones in that area, but that's sort of what we're working with, including the one that's before us today. So I think that unless there are other questions or comments, I think we can take a motion and see where we are.
I'll go ahead and move approval for a term of 1 year and advertise your self-imposed rules that are stated here.
And the conditions in the application don't require off-street parking. Did you want to require it?
Oh, I missed that.
It just said that it was available, but, okay.
Off-street parking, sorry, I missed that.
Okay, looks like Mr. Privet is seconded, so we have a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15063 for the reason that it meets statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 1 year, and including the self-imposed conditions stated in the application, and including, it'll be advertised as being off-street parking only.
Yes.
Okay, once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think you have the next application.
I do.
Okay, if you wanted to give a quick overview of that.
Yeah. It's basically a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, residence. We are going to advertise for 6 people. Kind of the same rules, no parties, no large gatherings, no one-night stays or locals without approval, off-street parking, quiet hours 10 to 8, Ring camera. Once again, we're in the area, we know the area. I actually this is 1516, the house to the left, I actually renovated it and just sold it. And I actually bought that house in '94 and lived in that house almost 10 years while I was in law school and afterwards. So I'm very familiar with this street. The house on the right is my old law partner that just passed away. I'm very familiar with this street and this house, and I have a very vested interest in this property. So it will be very well taken care of. I'm not sure we may not move back into it at some point when we sell our big house when the kids are gone.
Yeah, and this area seemed like it had even more concentration based on our records than the last one. I don't know if that changes any board members' views, but I will note that. Any questions or comments of the applicant on this application? Okay. I didn't have any questions, so questions, well, I don't have anyone else signed up to speak, so anyone else hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I think we can take a motion, see where we are.
I'll make a motion that we deny the request in 5064 for the reasons that it does not meet the statutory conditions for the special exception requested.
Do we have a second?
I don't have a voting pane.
I think she's fixing it, but. And did we, just for the record, do we have a specific condition that you're saying is not satisfied?
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't have to be a quotation, but just in general.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the. Condition number 3, proposed use doesn't adversely affect the use of the neighboring properties in accordance with the applicable zoning district restrictions, generate additional pedestrian and vehicular traffic in conflict with the existing traffic in the neighborhood. And number 6, the anticipated development from hazardous and obnoxious conditions, which I think is what, in my opinion, the overcrowding of these type of properties in the neighborhood creates.
Okay. And then potentially 2, sometimes we cite 2, but that's in harmony with the general.
Harmony with the general purpose and intent, yes.
with the-
Condition
okay.
number 2.
So 2, 3, 4, and 6. Okay. So we've got it up now. Okay, so there's you making the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it so we can.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second to deny case 15064 for the reason that it does not meet the statutory conditions for a special exception. Once you're able to, cast your votes. Okay, so that motion failed. Do we have another motion?
Not the opposite of denied.
Okay. So,
A period.
It's the only other motion.
Yeah.
approval for probably a period of a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
year.
And then any conditions?
Same, add parking condition.
Okay.
Off-street parking only.
Okay. We have a second? 1 year, it's same motion as the last one, same conditions, okay. Got a motion and a second to approve the application in case 15064 for the reason that it meets the conditions for a special exception. On the condition, will be advertised with the self-imposed conditions stated in the application and be advertised as having off-street parking only. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 15 is that case 15068, special exception of Jeremy Delatare for home sharing at 127 Northwest 16th Street.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Delatry. I'm the owner of 127 Northwest 16th Street.
Okay. Just give us a brief overview.
Yeah, I'll be completely honest. I came yesterday and did this, and I do not know why I'm here today. I'll be completely honest with you. He
Okay.
just told me I had to be here. I thought I settled everything yesterday when they passed it. So really, I'm kind of caught off guard. I got an email about the meeting yesterday. I was told verbally about the meeting today. So I really, I guess the only thing that I'm going to be able to do is, in the last meeting, some guy and even in the comments that I read, that the land was donated to Habitat for Humanity back in 2004 for my mom to build a home on. And the way that was painted to me was kind of, for the lack of better words, petty in a sense. if I handed somebody $1,000 and they were able to turn it into $100,000, I'd be congratulating them, you know. So for us to be, my family, to be donated this land to build a Habitat home in 2004, which we've maintained. My mom passed away 2 years ago. My sister's been living there, and we've done our best, me and my brother, to maintain as much as we can. We just updated the exterior, other than the shed. We did I own my own paint company, so we painted the exterior, brand new innards. And so our plan is to turn this into, our main plan is to turn it into a short-term rental, mainly for focusing on nurses, traveling nurses, especially during a time like this. But we also want to have the option to allow Airbnb as well if in the interim that we cannot find a short-term tenant there. I've been in property management for 13 years. This is what I do. I'm also a realtor. I understand the aesthetics of a property and how can it have adverse effects on the neighborhood. I also would like to say, you know, we're surrounded by plenty of apartments, and I understand that the traffic there is kind of tough, and even off-street parking, we don't have any. It's actually prohibited, but I feel like we have adequate enough driveway space for what we're trying to allow. I don't really have a huge rebuttal other than just making a comment on that statement that I don't feel like was adequately represented. You know, it almost made it seem like, oh, you know, the neighborhood is gifting you this property and now you're trying to monetize it. I mean, we've lived there since 2004. This thing is almost paid off. You
Was
know,
this by a board with a HP commissioner, or was it by a protest, or how
I
did
think
this?
it was it was a guy, I don't know who he was. I think it was a protest. I think he was part of the, I guess the Mestre Park or Highland Park area
Okay.
there. And,
Interesting.
so I just want to, you know, we're taking this, you know, our family doesn't come from a lot of money, obviously. This is a Habitat home. And so we're using this property to change the trajectory of my family's life.
Right,
And we're able
right.
to monetize that. So this is what we're trying to do. We don't live here. I think it's a great place. It's centered where it's located. It's real close to OU and St. Anthony's. So again, our main focus is going to be the short-term rental. We would just like that not to be prohibited from allowing an Airbnb if we had to, in the event that we couldn't find a short-term rental.
Okay. So the reason you were at HP and then you had to come back here, when you filed the application to have home sharing, based on your overlay district, you needed to go to HP first. So you filed your application with us.
Okay.
But the code says that based on your overlay district, you have to actually go through HP
Okay.
first and get a recommendation from them, which is not binding on us, but they are sort of closer to those neighborhoods.
Okay.
And can give some direct kind of feedback, and then they give a recommendation to us. And then your application comes to us with that application, and then we formally hear the application.
Got it.
So that's why you're here.
Okay.
And it looks like HP recommended approval, but that we consider the impact of parking and any increased congestion in the area. So that's the summary that I got from HP. So, board members, any questions of the applicant? I'm going to call Ms. Friddle up in just a second, but any questions of the applicant? Okay. We'll call you back up, but we'll talk to Ms. Friddle for just a second, and then I'll call you back up.
Okay.
Okay.
Katie Friddle, I'm Principal Planner for Current Planning and Urban Design and staff to the Historic Preservation Commission. And I don't have any comments beyond what the commission provided. There was discussion about the status of the house as a Habitat for Humanity property. It was indicated that there was never any sort of conditions placed on how long it needed to stay in some sort of affordable housing status, and that's not the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission anyway. It was just raised as a concern by a resident. So beyond that, Historic Preservation Commission didn't have any other comments regarding the application.
Okay. And then the parking and congestion, I think he said they're required to have off-street anyway, so maybe we can limit, the number of guests that might limit the number of cars. But I think parking would be addressed. And then the congestion point, what was that?
I think they were just talking generally about number of cars on the street already, number of residents already, in the area, multifamily properties in the area already. So it was just a concern that several residents raised about how many cars are we adding, how many people coming and going, so.
Okay. Was there any traction on, I think I heard that there might have been something on getting the city to clarify, city council to clarify the overlay district versus HP and how that interplays with the home
So,
sharing
yeah,
ordinance?
residents, we had a discussion about the difference between the HP zoning district and the HL overlay. Some residents that were involved when the ordinance was being developed indicated that they hadn't understood that there was a distinction being made between the two districts and that the provisions that were established for HP districts were not going to apply in the HL overlay. So my assumption is that they'll be reaching out to council members and other city staff to talk through those issues. And, I'm sure if the home sharing process is addressed from the BOA perspective, they'll want to be part of that discussion as well.
Okay. Any questions, board? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, sir? I don't know if you had any comments on that or anything, but.
No, I think just
Okay.
the parking issue. I don't think we'll have very many guests to where we would, our driveway goes back pretty long. And when booking with us, you just have to understand that, there'll be some moving around. So it'll be a little complicated, but I don't think it's gonna be an issue. There's already signs that we're not allowed to park on the street anyways. And so that would obviously be enforced when we put it onto whatever website that whether it be Airbnb or whatever short-term rental website that we use, it would be noted that there's no off-street parking, that if it can't be done within the driveway, then it won't work.
Okay. Yeah, I'd rather have long-term renters here, but that's not within our purview. So I think there's not a lot of concentration right there near Broadway, so I think I could support it, especially if we add a condition that it'll be advertised as off-street parking only. I could support it. Questions, comments, or a motion from the board? I was thinking two, but whatever the board thinks. And we can discuss it a period of time if the board's inclined to grant it, but I was thinking probably 2 years just in this area. Okay,
I'm okay with 2.
sounds like a motion.
I'll move approval for a period of 2 years and that you advertise your self-imposed house rules, no on-street parking.
Got it.
Okay, got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15068 for the reason that it meets statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 2 years and on the condition that it'll be advertised with the self-imposed conditions and advertised as off-street parking only. Cast your votes, please. And it's approved.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Item 17 is case 15072, special exception of Bad Apple Equities to allow home sharing at 2319 Northwest 16th Street.
Hey guys, Brady Salcido. I'm the owner of 2319 Northwest 16th Street. And my wife and I bought this property really because we like to travel and we have a 1-year-old. And for Airbnbs, we found there are not a lot of Airbnbs that focus on families. And so this is actually our first property, and we really wanted to focus on mostly like more family-friendly Airbnbs. So we have outlet protectors, cribs, pack and plays. I believe we listed it for 10 guests, but we're actually gonna lower that to 8, if I can change that on the application. With one of those rooms actually being like a baby room, playroom, kids room area. And so we'll have security cameras on site, Ring doorbells, same with like the first lady who came in. Really just focusing on just making it a great place for families to stay. And then also we'll have noise monitors in the home too to monitor and make sure there's no parties, nothing like that. Security cameras will also help with that as well. Make sure there's no additional guests, no parties, nothing like that going on. I think that's it. And there's plenty of parking on the driveway there, so there'll be no on-street parking because I believe in this area there's no on-street parking. So there's plenty of parking there, enough for 3 to 4 cars, but we'll just allow for 3. And then the garage will not be used.
So they won't have access to the garage?
Unless like they need it, but we're listing it without the use of the garage.
looking it up really quickly, but. And while I'm doing that, I don't know if board members have any questions or comments. The applicant. Yeah. This one was just in a little bit too concentrated of an area for me personally. I mean, we've had all kinds of Airbnbs in this area, and that's one of my concerns at least. So I don't know how the rest of the board feels about it. Even on our maps, there's a lot of special exceptions we've granted in this area. I'm sure there's more that have been grandfathered in, and I'm sure there's more that are on Airbnb, but I mean, it's just such a prime area, and it's getting just too saturated. So I don't know if I can support it, but I'm only one board member, so. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, I don't have anyone else signed up to speak. Is anyone else hoping to speak on this application other than the applicant? Hearing none, I think we can take questions, comments, or a motion. And he's modified the application to have 8 people as a max.
Which 2 of those would be kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he mentioned earlier 10, but he's reducing it to 8, but the application says 8, so, okay. And if the board is inclined to approve it, I mean, I would want a maximum of 1 year in this area. But I currently can't, I don't think I can support it, but I can't make a motion, so do we have a motion?
Yeah, I think this is a kind of a prime example, unfortunately, of one of those, kind of starting to change the character of a neighborhood. We have so many in this neighborhood already. So based on that, I would move that we do not approve case number 15072 for the reasons that it does not meet the statutory conditions for the special exception requested.
Yeah, I would agree, just in the plaza area, near the plaza area. Should get a lot, but do we have a second? A motion and a second to deny the application in case 15072 for the reason that it does not meet the statutory conditions for a special exception. Did you have the same conditions or the same statutory elements as the last one?
My
I think it was
proposal is based on,
2456, wait,
yeah, I mean, and frankly, I
245.
mean, for purposes of record and potential appeal, I mean, I think, finding number 2 is, general purpose and intent being hindered, I think is the main reason why.
Okay. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And the application is denied.
There's nothing else we can do with that.
I think after the appeal process, you can apply again. Oh, I'm sorry, this is only 2 to approve, so the motion has failed, sorry. And so now we need a new motion, if we can get a new motion.
As I said, we're really focused on, families and kids. So this is gonna be something very different, we hope. That's what we're shooting for. Like I said, it was something that we noticed when we traveled. We're not looking for parties or bachelor parties or anything like that. We just want a place for families to be able to go and be able to stay with their kids. And so if I was able to show you the pictures of the property that we furnished already, it's set up for kids. So people go in there are gonna see a crib and a bedroom, a kid's play area. It's not a place you're gonna wanna go party.
Well, it seems like I don't know if there's 3 votes to support the application, but the motion to deny the application failed. So do we have a motion alternatively?
I'll move approval for 1 year, advertise your self-imposed house rules, advertise no on-street parking.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the application in case 15072 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 1 year, including the conditions stated in the application and advertised as off-street parking only. once you're able to, cast your votes. That one's approved. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Slightly better news for you.
Item 18, case 15074, request for special exception for home sharing at 1500 Dennison Drive.
Is the applicant present? Okay, we'll move that one to the end after Ms. Avey, I think.
Item 19, case 15076, as special exception of Fudge Family Ranch to allow home sharing, 501 East I-44.
Afternoon, I'm Jeff Sabin with Center for Economic Development Law, 301 North Harvey, Suite 100. I'm here representing Chip Fudge, trustee for the Fudge Children's Trust, who's the owner of Fudge Family Ranch LLC. We're requesting a special exception for home sharing use for the property located at 501 East I-44 Service Road. You can see it up there. It's right where I-44 merges into Lincoln there, just on the north side of the freeway. On site, primarily it's a 1935 build, 4,500 square foot, 8-bedroom Italianate house on 7.1 acres, which includes some forested land and a private pond. There's a long circular drive capable of parking well over 10 cars in immediate proximity to the house, in addition to areas not immediate proximity to the house. In addition to the overall size of the property, and I guess to counter some of the arguments we've heard sitting here for some of the other properties, this isn't really back in a neighborhood. The size of the house and frankly, the cost of the house is different to a lot of the other houses in the area, so we don't feel that it would be an impact on the housing market around there in terms of affecting the character. As an additional comment on that, our statutory owner list for purposes of notices had to go out to 700 feet instead of 300 feet just to get to 10 different property owners. We're surrounded by large undeveloped tracts. There is a PUD to the north and the west that's contemplated for a mixed density residential project, which includes single-family detached townhouses, row houses, apartments, and a large private clubhouse. We don't know what the timing for that development is. We do know that, at least according to the site plan that was attached to the master design statement, backing up to the western and northern boundaries of our property, it would be single-family detached housing. There's an irregularly shaped property zone, O2, immediately east of our property. We do not have any records or knowledge of what might be proposed on that lot in the future. Immediately east of that O2 property is another PUD that's planned for private office uses, but again, we don't know what the timing of that development might be. With 8 bedrooms, we propose a maximum of 16 guests at a time, although we can anticipate really only around 12 at a time. Chip is going to be requiring a minimum 2-night stay. He's also going to require guests to purchase damage insurance for each time they stay there and limit their parking to paved surfaces. And I guess going back to, again, some of the differences between the size of this house, the cost of this house, and the relatively isolated nature of where this property is located, we are requesting a longer period of time for the special exception than you would normally authorize. We're requesting the full 10 years maximum that you are allowed to under the code. Chip or I are here to answer any questions you all might have.
So, I don't know that I necessarily have a lot of questions. A lot of times, some of these larger properties elicit a lot of protests from the neighboring properties. You have not, I think, because of the distance that you have from a lot. I mean, you mentioned a 700-foot notice area, and just to reach 10 houses, apparently. I mean, so I think that certainly is a point in your favor. Just it is a pretty isolated residence. So I'm not too worried about, impact on neighbors or anything like that. I also just sort of personally, and as a member of the board that has to analyze these every couple of weeks, I think the city needs a couple of these, mixed in. I think we need sort of a diverse array of home sharing. And so we do need a couple of these. We've approved, I think, one or two of the larger ones. But I do think this, as a city, we need to be able to offer a couple of these to larger groups, more expensive home sharing properties available to people coming in from out of town, things like that. So, I can support it sort of for that reason, because I think we need a couple of these mixed in. We need some lower income, a lot of middle, and then we do need some on the higher end. As a city, I think we need to offer that. So I can support the application. I could not support it anywhere near 10 years because I have no idea what's going to happen in this area. But I was thinking maybe 2 years just to see how the area develops and how the code develops. There's been some talks of revising the home sharing ordinance. And so if it gets revised, I would want this revisited with those revisions. And if we approve 10 years, that wouldn't happen. So I think a shorter period of time, but that's kind of where I am. I don't know about the rest of the board, but.
May I make a comment on that?
Sure.
Cost me $1.5 million to go into the house. Probably is going to be 90 to 180 days before I get the house ready for, to be able to Airbnb it. If I couldn't have 10 years, could I request a 5-year variance rather than 10?
Yeah, I mean, we can see how the board feels about that. But Ms. Asbury, did you have a comment?
Well, the only comment I really had was I totally agree with you that we do need more of these here in Oklahoma, not just the city.
The answer is yes and no. I have a 20-unit apartment complex over at 39th and Penn that we're finishing up, and 2 of those units we are wanting to come back and get a variance for on that. So,
no, I said I totally agree. We do need more. I totally agree. Let me correct you, that we do need more. The only thing that...
I apologize.
No, you're fine. I know you weren't listening. The only thing...
I don't have my hearing aids.
The only thing that's interesting to me is that you said stay at least 2 nights and no 1-night stays. Mm-hmm. However, what about people who live in Oklahoma, such as the Commission on the Status of Women, that may want to use it for something? So I'm doing an advertisement here. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, it's good. I think it's lovely.
Thank you.
And the 2-night, I like the 2-night minimum. I sort of...
I just wanted a plug for the commission.
I would sort of think 2 to 3.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, the 1 nights you bring in a lot of the crazier parties, and then they're in and out, so.
I have a home in California and a home in Colorado, and Airbnb both of those, and they're larger homes, and we realized early on if we rent for 1 night, then they frequently become party houses.
Yeah. Yes. And you'll get some parties at a 2-night, but but still, I mean, again, I think Oklahoma City needs to offer a couple of these. I don't think we need a lot of them. We need a few of these available to accommodate reasonable gatherings. I won't say parties, but reasonable gatherings. And so, yeah, you won't get any pushback from me on that. But
if I could add one thing about the term of years, and in the scheme of development, since none of the properties surrounding us are currently developed, 2 years is not really a lot of time for the property to show or the area around it to develop into anything when there's nothing there right now. They'd have to go in and do all the site work and everything else. So I think if you're not inclined to do a 10-year period, 5-year period would give you more of what you're looking for to see how the area might develop over time. 2 years, I think we're going to be looking at roughly the same situation we're in now, maybe some dirt work by then. So,
okay.
I think I could support the application based on a couple of factors. This area is not highly densely populated with these type of properties at this time. There is currently a lot of vacant property surrounding the area. And like the chairman said, this is a different type of property, and we do want a diverse type. I can't agree, Mr. Saban, with your statement that that this wouldn't change a lot in 2 years. That any of us that have lived in Oklahoma City for any amount of time can see what can happen in 2 years. And so I don't oppose the application, but certainly would not approve 10 years and don't think that I would accept or approve an application that's longer than 2 for that very reason. I mean, We know there's a lot of stuff that's in flux right now with this topic, with this issue, and so I think having an opportunity to come back and look at this in a couple of years, and if nothing's changed, great, you shouldn't have any trouble getting your special exception again, should that occur. But I think, I mean, that's just kind of where I'm sitting, and I think before you made the comment, that's what I was going to say, is that, I mean, we've just seen things changing so fast. That's where we are in our city right now, which is great, but I think, you know, having it tied up for, and I get it, there's an economic interest there too, but as far as the, you know, status of what we see now, that would be where
And I understand that things do change over rapidly, but in terms of developing a new master plan community on two sides of us, that's going to take longer than your typical 2-year period.
Sure. We've got the, so I wasn't leaning so much on the surrounding development. I was leaning a bit more on changes from the city's perspective, because it's just a very controversial topic in general, and there's pressure on council to make some amendments to the current home sharing ordinance. And if they do that, I personally would want sort of a limited number of special exceptions grandfathered in under the old code, and to get people caught up under the new code. So I'm more focused on potential code changes and additional guidance from the city for a shorter period of time. I mean, 2 to 3 years, I think I could do, but longer than that, especially with a larger home sharing application like this, I don't know that I could get much longer than 2 to 3 years, but I could get on board to 2 to 3 years.
So for me, I can definitely get on board for 3 years, because did I not hear you say that it will take a period of time before it is ready to move in? And wouldn't that time start today?
Sure, it would.
Upon
but
approval?
You know, they said, 90-ish days, so 2 years plus 90 days, you know.
I can
so
get on board for
3 years
three years.
is generous. The other thing is, I don't know that there'll be a lot of pushback if and when you come back in 2 or 3 years. And at that point, we could potentially grant a longer period of time. Council made these applications relatively cheap. So some of the other applications here are a lot more expensive. And so I know you may have to retain a representative and things and take the time and all that, which I understand, and you don't want to go through that as more than you have to. But just for our purposes, and I have to represent the city's interests, I was thinking 2 to 3 years. Sounds like we have a 3 and a 2, so.
Well, is it possible to have a 3-year from the day we start with Airbnb? Because we're 90 to 180 days out.
I think it would have to be from the date the board approves it. Well, after there's a 10-day appeal window, and after that, I don't know that we can, start it 90 days after that or anything like that. And I don't know that I would feel comfortable doing that, because if we did that, it's then in your hands on when it would start. So you just delay it, and we have a lot of uncertainty. So I would rather have a little more certainty.
Well, I assure you, with $2 million on the line, I'm going to be as diligent as I can to get that mess put together as fast as I can.
Right, not going to sit on it, yeah. Board members, if there are any other conditions that you're considering or a period of time, I think we can talk about that and get some clarity, but.
3 years and 90 days?
I guess I should say, I don't have anyone else signed up to speak, but is there anyone else that would like to speak on this application other than the applicant? Okay. Hearing none, I think we can take a motion.
I would like to move that we approve case number 15076 for a special exception for a period of 3 years.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15076 for the reason that it meets statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 3 years. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Item 20, case 15078, special exception of Kyle and Catherine McCoy for home sharing at 1920 Runway Boulevard.
Good afternoon, Kyle McCoy, 1920 Runway Boulevard. I live in Seattle with my wife, grew up here, mom and dad here, sister here, family here. So we bought this home in Wheeler District, which you probably are familiar with, in the last year. And I come here a lot. I'm here at least once a month. I also work here part-time, a financial advisor for Native American tribes. And so, want to spend more time with mom and dad. That was the whole point of acquiring this property, and we want to do a home rental. Now, the HOA of Wheeler District requires 90 days max. We're not going to be renting this out a lot, to be honest with you, because we're here so often too, but we want to have that flexibility. It's a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath, really family-friendly property. It's going to be a premium property. It's going to be listed at a premium price, not the last premium price, but pretty premium property.
Did you say a 90-day maximum?
Correct.
Okay.
According to the homeowners association, yeah. 90 days of rental, which we probably won't come even near that.
Yeah, I would think it might be a minimum, but, okay. Sorry to
No,
interrupt.
max, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. To my knowledge, there's one other in Wheeler so far, at least listed.
We've
And so-
approved a couple.
Have we?
Yeah.
I know I remember one.
Yeah.
Okay, I looked it up today and I just saw one, and I think there's a one here today also after me in the Wheeler District. So let's see, in terms of the house itself, we have a Ring doorbell in the front, we have a garage, we have street parking there. Won't use the garage for parking, but there is a spot to park in front of the garage and in the back of the house. And in addition, there's a photo of that. In addition, there's parking in front of the property. I think that's the important part. This is new to us. This is our second home. We have never done rentals before. While you were talking, I actually picked up some things, so we would definitely do the 2-night minimum. I don't know if my wife put that in here or not, but all the standard sort of rules that you see we have listed in here.
Cindy, would you mind looking this one up, just on Airbnb real quick?
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to repeat something that you said at
Yes,
the
ma'am.
beginning. You
Yeah.
said that Wheeler District allows you to do this, but no more than 90 days? Is
Correct.
that? Okay.
Max, yeah, 90 days.
So do they not want renters out? Is that the issue?
Or is it just short-term rental? Is that what?
Sorry, short-term rentals.
Okay.
Airbnb type rentals, not, I guess, monthly or yearly. That would be different.
Okay.
But under ours, it couldn't exceed 30 days
Right,
anyways.
right, yeah.
Okay, got it. That's where I was a little bit confused.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and if they, the reason I ask, if they had a minimum, they wouldn't want home sharing at all. But apparently they provide for home sharing
Maximum.
a maximum of 90 days, so, okay.
Okay.
So in our research, I looked a lot around Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma, and for obvious reasons, and then up here, and came across Wheeler, and we were just really impressed with it. Obviously, accessibility to downtown, so going to the Thunder games and all of those things. That's why we think it's attractive.
Yeah, I recalled 2 or 3 that have come to us.
Yeah, so I see lofts there, obviously, and the smaller, but not, ours is the largest property they actually make in Wheeler, so it's really a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath, so it's gonna tend to attract families, I would assume. The other thing is my wife put 10 in there, which I'm okay to reduce that, to be honest with you. But we do have 4 bunk beds in there, to your earlier question, ma'am, and there are 3 queen beds outside of that.
And then Cindy, on your map here, well, on the city's map here, are all these pink squares special exceptions, or, okay.
All the pink squares you said, sir?
There's that, and then up in the more concentrated, yeah, there's some more up in
So
there.
that is actually mine property, 19. Okay, yeah, that one's mine, so it must be already showing up, but the I see maybe 2 others there in the tiny properties, not in the homes.
Right, right. So then the question for us, I guess, would be, do we want one of the larger homes, or do we think there's too much concentration already in Wheeler? So knowing that we have another one in Wheeler coming up on the next item, so. Questions or comments of the applicant?
Yes, ma'am.
Reading through your application, I saw something that I've never seen before, and it said something about a community pool. You're going to advertise that for the use of your guests as well?
You know, that's a good question. First of all, the pool just got finished. It's not actually even open yet. But the rule is with a key fob, our key fob, you can access the pool. So I assume the answer would be yes. It's pretty well marked, no lifeguard on premises. So there's a lot of, pretty clear. But also, if you're concerned about that, I'm happy to remove that part of the advertising too.
We don't set what you put down, but I just had never seen it before, and it just caught my eye.
Right.
Okay. I think, at least for me, well, first of all, I don't have anyone else signed up to speak, but did anyone else want to speak on this? Okay. For me, I mean, I guess the only way I could get on board with it is the fact that it's something different in this district. It's one of the larger properties in this district and not one of the kind of townhomes over there that we already have multiple home sharing special exceptions for. And so, I mean, I guess maybe, that would be, to me, the only argument in favor of the application is that there's a mix of different kinds of home sharing in Wheeler and not all just the same kind. But other than that, I'm struggling to find a lot in support of this application just because there's relatively few residences in that area anyway, and there's a lot of home sharing already going on there. I don't know that it's developed the same way the city thought that it would develop. So I don't know. Those are my general thoughts, but any questions or comments from the board on this application?
Other than I concur with those thoughts. I don't have anything additional to add, but that helps.
I mean, I guess I could maybe get on board with this one for like a year just to see how it goes, just because it is different and it's a little bit further south.
One question I have for the applicant is, I haven't been all throughout the residential area in Wheeler, but these are the houses that are pretty narrow, one next to the other, correct? And I understand yours is one of the, you said bigger homes there.
Yes.
But, it's still kind of townhome style, right? Where your neighbors are directly abutting the other side of your wall,
Yeah, they're
right?
single-family homes for sure. This
But
particular
connected?
Not connected.
Not connected,
No,
okay.
not
That
connected.
was
Really
my
important, not connected, yeah.
Okay,
They're just narrower.
Yeah,
And
okay.
it's going to triple, and I think you're probably aware of this, in terms of the number of units, it's like going to triple from where it currently is. So this is just the beginning of the number of homes that will be put up there.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little worried that if the home sharing continues at this rate, I mean, we have a lot of home sharing, even as the other houses expand. If home sharing expands with it, that's a lot of home sharing in this area that I don't know.
And I think that's what, one of our tough calls that we have to make but we're tasked with is, protecting the general purpose and intent of the area and the use of that surrounding property. And so, sure, you can understand that's where we're, struggle with, because as the chairman said, at this rate, if it continues, you've got.
Oh, I completely understand that, and I understand the notion of being concerned about that. I guess I'm not I don't follow the density in this area. I don't see it I saw a few on there, but those are the lofts, not the homes. And I think it's just one home that's approved. So that density, I'm not sure I follow you, sir, on that.
Right, and that was my point, sort of saying in your favor, is that it's a
Oh,
little
I
bit-
see.
Yeah, it was a little bit
Understood.
different, so that, I think, is the best argument in your favor. My thought is just this area, I'm worried that it's gonna develop into a district with a couple of restaurants and breweries, and then a bunch of home sharing properties, and then a couple of people that didn't know better that moved their family in there or something, like that's what I'm a little concerned about and trying to guard against, because I don't think that's how this was designed. I think the city expected a new trendy neighborhood that people can move in and sort of meet some new friends and neighbors and not have basically a stretched out hotel with a bunch of home sharing properties taking over the district. So that's my concern, not saying that your application gets us there, but those are my concerns about this area.
Understood. I don't personally think it's going to end up in that case, but I can understand the concern. The reason for that is because there's such a community there. Even us, they accept as sort of Seattleites that come in and they have events all the time. So I don't think it will land there, but it's obviously an important concern. I think that's also why they capped that very explicitly at 90 days in the homeowners. If anything, maybe they should reduce that over time. I don't think we would even rent it out for 90 days.
Is that 90 days to the same renter? Is that what you're saying?
No,
Or-
to just Airbnb, 90 day, or, one night stay, or, a single night, 90 days cap. I'm not even sure how they would track that, but I understand the intent behind why they would want to do that.
Yeah. It would make sense if they would say you can have it for home sharing, but only for 90 days, and then you can't home share it anymore, or something like that. I could see why they might do that.
So maybe they're thinking about 90 days overall. For instance, if you rent it for 1 week, that's 7 days out of your 90 days that you totally have. Is that
Correct.
what
That's
the
what-
concept is?
That's what the idea is, yeah.
Okay, so I like that, and that's a good provision that I think that they have put in place. I respect our chairman, and for the record, as of today, 2022, because there are not a lot of properties in this area that are Airbnb, I can get on board for a period of 1 year, and that way we can monitor it and see how many apply within that period of time.
Understood. Yeah, thank you.
Sounds close to a motion. So,
So I would like to make a motion that we approve case number 15078 for a special exception of a period of 1 year with the conditions that are already established.
okay, do we have a second? Got a motion and a second to approve the special exception in case 15078 for the reason it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception for a period of 1 year and including the self-imposed conditions stated in the application. Once you're able to, cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Item 21, case 15080, special exception of Michelle Massey to allow home sharing at 937 Peddlers Lane.
Is the applicant present? Does not look as though the applicant's present, so we'll move that to the end, and then it sounds like we'll have a big vote on continuances at the end of this
That's
meeting.
what it sounds like. Okay, that takes us to item 22, 15081. This is an appeal of Strawberry Fields, the decision for a certificate of approval to paint the facade of a building at 512 Southwest 3rd Street.
Okay, is the applicant present? Okay, so that would be, so you'll go first. You filed the appeal, correct? Okay, so you'll go first, and then we'll hear from anyone else who wants to speak.
Good afternoon. Thank you for hearing us. My name is Bo Williams. I'm General Counsel for Strawberry Fields LLC. And this is Pat Salome. She's the managing partner.
Hi.
Strawberry Fields is a multi-use development that's approximately 50 acres immediately west of Scissortail Park. Our first structure will be a 3-story building called the Lucy that will front on, that will front on 3rd Street and will be approximately 3 structures to the west of the corner of Hudson and Oklahoma Boulevard. The property that's in question here is a wall that runs along the far west side of our property that we're going to build the Lucy on. That address is 401 South Walker.
And I'll have to stop you. I don't normally like to do this. I like to let you do the whole thing. But Ms. Friddle has to leave in 10 minutes. And so I'll give her an opportunity to just make a couple of comments first, and then we'll go right back to you, so, if that's okay.
You want me to be seated?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And sorry to interrupt.
No, it's all right.
I'm sorry. I have a child that I have to pick up, so I have to leave at a certain time, or I'll be in trouble. So I'm staff, Katie Friddle, again, staff to the current Planning and Urban Design Division, and I manage the planners that staff the design review districts. So I passed a note. My understanding is that the concern here is around who owns the wall that has been painted. It's not an objection to the painting of the wall in and of itself from a design review guideline standpoint. The note that I passed was that we can approve a property owner to do work to their property. We obviously cannot approve a property owner to do work to someone else's property that they do not own. So if, in fact, the portion of the structure that was approved to be painted is not the property of the applicant, then I would think that that would kind of render the approval null and void. I would defer to municipal counselor's office on that and on the best way to address that. But if we issued a certificate of approval to do work to something that is in fact not on the applicant's actual property, then that would void out that approval.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions, and I'll stay as long as I can to try to be responsive to what the property owner and the appellant have to say.
Okay. What goes into determining who owns the property prior to the approval being granted? Is this just a representation
we
of
check
the
the
applicant?
ownership record in county to see that they are listed as the owner of the property that they've applied to do work to, and typically it's pretty obvious where the property is and, you know, the boundaries of the parcel and the building and that sort of thing. We don't typically ask an applicant for, you know, a detailed survey, that sort of thing. So there's a little bit of an honor system to, this is my building, I'm proposing to do work to it, which is typically not an issue because most people don't want to do work to something that's not theirs. But I know sometimes when we have buildings that are abutting each other and things of that nature, it gets a little more complicated with where the property lines actually fall.
Yeah, so just a boundary line dispute, basically, it sounds like.
That's my understanding of what the issue is.
Okay. Okay, any other questions?
I had a quick question. So my understanding is there was a building that existed there.
Yes.
That this wall was left, correct?
That appears to be the case.
Okay,
yes.
so when that building had to be demolished, I'm assuming there was some sort of approval or something?
There was an approval to demolish the structure that was there.
And
Yeah.
who made that request?
So that approval for the demolition of that building was to Strawberry Fields.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. We'll hear some comments from you. Thank you.
Thank you. You all already understand a lot more about this than I had understood that you did, so forgive me for being repetitive. The wall that is depicted here, that's the painted wall.
And this has already been painted?
It was already painted before the application to paint it was made.
Does that moot? I mean, what's the issue if it's already been painted?
The problem is, Your Honor, sir, that that is not their wall. The application was made for 512 3rd Street, which is the blonde brick structure that you also see here. If you look very closely, you will see that there is a singular 12-inch board that's been placed in between the blonde brick structure that does in fact face Third Street and is in fact owned by the Gardners. That board was placed after it was painted. We know not exactly when. The gray wall, the wall that was painted under and is the subject of the application to paint, was a remaining wall left over from the demolition permit that was granted to 401 South Walker. So this is the far west wall of 401 South Walker. We did demolish. We were in the process of demolishing. Mr. Gardner stepped in and asked for us not to demolish this wall. Presumably, we don't know exactly his purposes, but he asked as a courtesy not to demolish this wall, probably because it was so close to his and he may have been worried about its integrity. We will be demolishing this wall. We must in order to fulfill our purposes for Strawberry Fields. The no permission to paint it was sought or given by Strawberry.
Oh, yes.
It was painted before this application was made. This wall belongs to Strawberry Fields. I had submitted this survey. I don't know if you all have. There's several pages to the survey. The one that was done and is marked as being performed by Johnson and Associates in looks like in June of 22, just for this meeting. If I could, can I pull that up? Is there a? Yes. Okay. Perfect. If I touch this screen, will it show on there?
I don't think so. I think only Cindy can control. Yeah.
Okay.
And we do have a copy of that.
I'm sorry, dear. I couldn't hear.
Ms. Williams, we do have a copy of that at each seat, just so you know.
Okay. If you look right. Okay. All right. Do you see where, I'm sorry, who has the operation of the Eric?
She does. Oh, you might be able to.
Can I use it here? Yeah. Okay, super. Thank you. If you come right to this area right there, at the very top, at the far north end, there is a notation on the survey that says corner cap is 3 feet east of the property line.
That's correct. That's a witness cap.
Excuse me, sir?
It's a witness cap if they need to replace the original monument.
That is referring to the top of this wall that's now painted gray.
Right.
That was where it
Gotcha.
originally was.
Yep.
Okay. Then that strip that still has the exit, you know, the slanted marks, as it comes all the way to the south, there are two other notations. It's slightly at a slant. And there are two other notations. As you get closer to the far south end, it'll say it's, I think, it looks like it says 2.5 feet. It's hard for me to read. The very most southern tip is 1.3 feet. And that is the painted wall. It's on Strawberry's property. We want to take it down. We left it as a courtesy to Garland's when we did it. It will be an additional expense to take it down, to have a demolition company come back out and finish the job, an expense to Strawberry. It was, excuse me? I'm sorry, this is Miss Pat Salome. She's managing partner for Strawberry.
Ma'am, can we get your comments on the microphone? I'm sorry.
This is Pat Salome. She's managing partner for Strawberry Fields.
Okay.
The reason we left it is because he asked us to. Chris Cates, Midwest Wrecking, didn't want to do that at the time, but he thought we would have an issue, so we're about to start the Lucy. He said, wait till the engineers come on and let's let them tell us where it is. That's the only reason we left the wall.
Can't you knock it down now? What's preventing you from,
We could, sir, we didn't want to do that with the pending application.
okay,
And frankly, we've got so much going on.
yeah,
It wasn't a priority. But yes, sir, that's going to be, it's an eminently needed task to finish our demolition.
okay,
But we wanted to appear before you all before we did it.
okay, okay, I think I understand.
Which is going to happen soon, because we're coming to downtown design review.
Okay,
So we've got our plans, and we're ready to move forward, and we just wanted to make sure when we did take it down, we didn't do anything to his wall.
okay,
So Chris didn't want to move forward without the engineers,
okay,
is exactly what happened.
okay.
But he knew it wasn't his wall, that's the main thing.
Well, we'll bring you back up after we hear from them for a bit.
Yes, sir. There were a couple of other pictures that I don't know if they came through or not, that show the property itself. Is this the only photo that came through?
Are these what you're looking for?
It's that one where you can see the board itself.
Sure.
It's just, it's an unfinished
Yeah,
1 by 12. Thank
yeah.
you.
I think you, in the appeal, it said just to sort of make it appear as though that wall were attached to the other building.
I don't know what the purpose of that
Okay, I thought that's what I
board is.
saw somewhere, but, okay.
I'm sorry, sir?
I thought I saw that somewhere in the materials, but maybe not. Okay,
Oh, I made reference to the board being placed there. It was not placed there by Strawberry.
okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll call you back up at the end.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Okay. And Gardner? Okay. Debbie Gardner, I've got you signed up.
My name is Debbie Gardner, and our address is 2212 Reveille Road, Edmond.
Okay. Sure. And then, sir, if you're going to speak, if you could introduce
This is
yourself.
my
This is
partner,
Mark
husband.
Okay.
I didn't know if I could be here or not today. I had another event, so it finally kind of got taken care of.
Okay.
But anyway, we own a thriving business here at 512 Southwest 3rd called Monticello Cabinets and Doors. We've been doing it there for, I rented for a while and I bought it in 2005. And we've done a lot of improvements to that building just because it's a historical building. You know, we like the look of it. We like the building. It's a good location for our business. And we're trying to keep the appeal, the look, and everything good. We've, for a while, we had a lot of graffiti problems, and it seems like that's kind of moved on. So we're not having that as much as before. And I did get approval to do all these things. So I did receive approval. Now, I sent some pictures. Can we pull up the pictures that I sent on an email?
Cindy will have those, I assume. And while she's looking at those, it sounded like it was painted and then the permit was granted after that?
Negative.
So you got the permit and then painted it?
That is correct.
Okay. And
Let's
these are
go
your,
back, let's go back a little bit more, okay? Wrong way. We're looking for pictures.
Is that all?
There, well,
There,
go back one more. All right, so this is a picture of them when they were painting it. As you can see, we had a lot of choices of color and unfinished work on the building, on the demo. I've been in construction for 40 years. My call on that's an unfinished project. They left the roof, left the flashing on the side there, which looks pretty tacky. Now, you realize this is right off the boulevard. I mean, you're driving west. This is on the east side of the building. She said something on the west, but this is actually the east side of the building. She just got her cardinal direction wrong.
okay, that's fine.
So this looks tacky as can be.
Especially with
And I did ask Pat what she was going to do with that, and she said, it's her wall, not my wall. Well, let's refine that again. She claims that it's her wall. It's a shared wall. There's nothing on the other side of that wall but my building. If that wall comes down, I'm all open.
Yeah.
So the thing about it, it is a shared wall.
Well, you've got a wall on the other side, don't you?
Huh?
You've got a wall on the side of that building, on your side of the building, don't you?
Not on that other side, I do not.
Well, what's there?
Well, it's, that's the warehouse. What I'm saying is, if that wall was to come down, you'd see right in my building.
And so,
It's a shared wall. When they built that building, that was the wall they put there. And then they tied in two buildings together back in the 50s.
I guess I understood there to be a gap between
that's
the wall and the building.
That gap, when you pull that piece of wood off, you're looking 12 inches off that wall inside my building.
How far into your building? There's got to be some kind of wall, I would, unless there's no gap.
Let's go to that one picture which shows that piece of wood.
Is it just a void? Or,
There's a lovely picture of it right there, the way it was left.
I see a window right there too, did you see that?
Mainly aesthetically, we just want it to look nice, especially people coming to Scissortail.
Yeah, right there.
in those
Okay, so
areas.
you look at that picture right there. Now, we did put a piece of wood up there because the demo team tore it off and you could, roads and stuff could come in the building. But my building actually, if you see the block and the brickwork back there on that corner, that wall is the same, just on the other side of that wall is our warehouse. There's one wall there.
Okay.
So what they did, they took the building, there's another one right, if you want to look at the plan, there's another building 75 feet to the east, and then her old building that was there, and in the 50s, they took that and tied those two together. So that became a demiser wall, kind of are y'all familiar with the word demiser? It's one wall that separates two spaces. So that's what it did. So, two factors is that if you take that wall down, you got to put another wall up. Second factor is horrible eyesore for the city. Nobody's taking care of it. And there's always unfinished projects with Strawberry Fields. When they work around the building, they leave. They got, when they tore the building down on the south side of our project, they didn't grade it right. Water floods into the back of my building every time it rains hard. It's just been a nightmare, and I can't ever get them to complete and finish any project they do. So, therefore, that's why I went to Laura and asked the design committee, can I paint that wall? And they said absolutely yes when they saw the picture of
And
that.
it's our expense too.
And our expense. I mean,
weren't
I didn't ask
asking
her
for
for a dime.
So I don't know maybe if you could just short circuit and address the core issue, which is they say it's not your wall in the first place. It's not your property. And so the city got it wrong when they granted that permit. I mean, how do we address that?
Well, what would you do with it? Let me ask you
You
that
say, what
question.
would
What
we
would
do?
you do with it if it wasn't painted? Would you leave it like that? Would you want it looking like that in our city?
I guess I will short circuit, since I asked you to do that on your behalf, I'll do it on my behalf. I'll tell you where I am. I don't know that we can do anything about this. I don't know that this is the appropriate
Property
venue,
dispute.
for this dispute. I think this dispute probably should be resolved between the parties, frankly, instead of going and fighting it out. But if you can't,
So then
I
the
think
next
district court.
question is, what is it hurting?
You said, what's the hurting?
What is it hurting? What is the negative effect by painting it gray?
Yeah,
To
again.
match the rest of the building?
Sure, again, all probably issues to talk to a district judge about, but I just don't think that this is
What's
the
the
appropriate
negative
venue.
effect?
Yeah, for that, but.
I guess a question I have for you, sir, is I hear what you're saying. What's the problem with me having painted this regardless of if I own it or not? Is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry,
Are you saying that, two things. One, are you saying that you own this wall?
I didn't say I own the wall. It's a
Okay,
demiser wall.
No,
So it's a shared wall.
Get it. That's my first question. And then you said if the wall gets torn down, you got to put another wall back up. Who does? Are you saying you do or they do?
It'd be a shared property if they're going to build right up to the building, but I thought there was you can't build right against buildings anymore.
There's a certain amount of clearance that has to
I
happen.
think there's a certain amount of clearances has to happen. And I will fight for that too.
Okay. Any other questions? I think we can call you back up if we have other questions, but I think.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll be real brief.
Okay.
The issue is 170 square feet of property. Granted, that's not an issue for this board to worry about, but that's the underlying
Right.
problem.
Right.
We have never heard anything until this moment about that being a shared wall
Okay.
and not being a space in between it. I would very much appreciate it if we could delay any further proceeding here until your very next session when you could receive us. And I'm going to take that board down and furnish new pictures. And I will show you this wall has a window in it because it is a separate structure from that wall. They have their own wall. This wall is on our property. I asked to delay these proceedings until I can take that board down and bring that back before this board.
I will, I guess I'm not sure that, although it would appease my curiosity generally, I don't know that it would sort of get me anywhere on the actual issues that I have with the appeal, which, as I stated to the protester, I mean, well, I guess to the person who received the permit, the appellee, I guess. I don't see that this is an issue for this body. I think this is an issue for district court. I really, and I'll tell you another reason I think that's the case is, think of what would happen if you won here. What's the remedy? I mean, they have to take the paint off the wall. That doesn't resolve the property dispute, right? And so I don't think that this is the right body. And I understand why, you know, maybe you filed the appeal just to preserve that issue, and you know, you had the painting and you didn't want to concede that the painting was okay, and so you filed the appeal. I get all that, but I don't know that we can really make a determination of the underlying issue. I think the underlying issue is one for the court. Or you just mediate, especially if it's a shared wall.
I would agree with you, sir, that if there's a property issue, it should be dealt with in district court. Our problem, sir, is that this is an assertion of ownership.
Understood.
And it's
Yep.
very much akin to trying to do some sort of adverse possession
Right.
or something of that nature. Although, you know, the property lines are there and
Right.
it hasn't been 15 years and
Right.
there's not been an assertion of ownership. But our position and why I'm asking to hold this over, I don't want this just taken off your docket. I want to prove that this was a falsehood, making the original application to paint moot.
Yeah, I guess I could sort of understand that, although, again, I think at the core, I don't want this body making any determination at all about property rights. And I'm afraid that if we rule sort of one way or the other on the merits of the property issue, that we'd be well in excess of any authority we have to determine any kind of property rights, or someone takes our determination and uses it as evidence in front of a judge and say, oh, the Board of Adjustment said this was my property or their property or whatever. That's well beyond our authority to do. The only thing I think we could possibly do is if some determination happens at some point on who actually owns the property, then we could say, okay, the city was right or the city was wrong, and then we can make a determination on the appeal. But at that point, you don't need the appeal. You have that determination already, right? And so I just don't really know what the appeal, what our role is in this appeal, even if you win. And so that's why I'd be inclined to say that we deny the appeal and we don't really have a role to play in this dispute. And you all, I think it's something you can resolve, frankly, but if you can't, go to the proper forum for that.
If you deny our objection or appeal, then the administrative ruling, the administrative decision to grant them the authority to paint this wall stands.
It does, but it's just a piece of evidence, and you take that piece of evidence to whatever the appropriate body is, probably the district court, and say, I get that the city did it, but I've got these surveys that say that the city was wrong, and it's our property, and we're going to knock the wall down, and you know, whatever happens at that point happens. Did you have a comment or?
I was just going to say she already has an administrative determination by our permitting department, right? Did they get a permit for this to paint the wall?
Right, but that was based on just a quick property record search, and it showed that it was their property, but upon a further detailed survey,
If I may, sir.
What?
It was based on a representation that this wall was part of 512 North
right,
3rd Street.
right. And your argument was that it was wrong, and you've got some strong documents here with these surveys that support that.
Another alternative is just to continue, defer it indefinitely. Just don't make a determination one way or the other.
Right. And then once we get clarity on who owns it, then we can hear it again. But again,
But at that point,
right,
it's
it's
moot
gonna be
because you're
moot.
going to
it's moot.
down anyway. I mean, like, even if you leave here and go take that wall down right now, I don't think that there is, other than an assertion that it's going to leave my building exposed, and you say that that's the first time that you've even heard that, I didn't understand there to be before today an assertion that he thinks that he owns the wall. It was just, I don't know why the application was made in that way, but if you, I guess to me, that's where I'm getting a little confused, is that if you extrapolate this out all the way, at some point, you're going to have torn down the wall anyway, so what?
If I may address that.
Yes.
If you let this administrative decision stand and deny our appeal, and we go to district court, we're faced with a determination, it'll come up in district court, that their assertion of property rights was affirmed by administrative decision, and that's exactly what would be argued.
I think a judge would see that as an honest mistake in this situation. And I honestly think too, a judge would grant this wall to the current owner, no matter what, even though it's over, and it's because it's been there so long. It's what, 50s probably?
They might. There's got to be law about a shared wall,
Well,
and
yeah,
there's law about it.
something.
I don't know what it is, but that's well beyond our authority to determine.
Yeah.
We're arguing that it's never been shared at all.
I just have
Right.
one quick question. Did you state that the wall was already painted?
It was painted before the application.
So the wall is currently painted?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
So your argument is the property line, right? Not necessarily the wall, the painted wall.
We're objecting to the assertion of ownership of this wall as
Right.
represented.
I'm going to have to agree with you, Chairman. This
Yeah.
is something that needs to be taken to a different hearing, not before us, because we can't determine who owns the property, although according to what you have written, you own the property, but we cannot make the
Yeah,
determination.
and I understand their position.
I do
mean,
too,
their
but
their
this is-
position is, well, let's get every shred of evidence in our favor, and this is a shred of evidence in their favor. The city's determination, it being wrong, them winning at this board, all of that. I understand all that stuff. I think the one issue is like, maybe we continue. I don't really know what this does whenever you extrapolate this out, as you mentioned, Mr. Ibarra, but maybe we're not seeing every potential option, and so maybe we extend indefinitely or something, and then if something we didn't anticipate comes up, your application isn't denied forever, it's still pending, and then if you need to come back to this board for some reason, you can. I don't think that's likely. I think what's most likely is this gets resolved some other way, and then you don't really need to come back here. But that would be the only argument I can see in favor of just continuing it indefinitely. Otherwise, I would.
Resolved some other way in that, like, for example, they tear it down. I mean, his application was his original application for a city permit or whatever was limited to painting the wall, which
Right.
was done. Now, if the wall's torn down today,
Then it would be moot.
it's moot.
Well, other than maybe if they want a determination from this board on who owned that property, which I don't
Which
think we're
we
going to do.
can't do.
Yeah, and so.
And I think that is before you because of the administrative decision. I would ask 1 week, your next session, whatever, to represent to this board what that looks like behind that board that's been placed there.
But I think that gets us to, let's say you had that today, that picture today. I think the board's position is still the same. We're not in a position to determine that whether or not that there's a space there and who owns the wall and who can have use of it or whatever. I think we get back to it, but I also understand why you filed your appeal. There was a decision that you didn't agree with at the Design Commission, so your remedy is appeal to this body. And I think what we're saying here is the underlying issue of that you want us to determine whether they made a mistake or not is dependent upon who owns the property in question, and we can't make that.
I would be in favor of, well, not in favor of, I would be in favor of, I think it makes most sense to just deny it and let you all sort this out somewhere else. But if you want to keep it open, I think we keep it open indefinitely, and then once you get some clarity or an agreement on who owns it, you can either withdraw the appeal or we can address it at that point. I mean, I would think that would be, that's as far as I'd be willing to go. I'm definitely not in favor of ruling one way or the other on the appeal, other than denying it. So I can't rule in favor of the appeal. And so I would think a continuance indefinitely, once you get some formal clarity on who owns that, again, a court order or an agreement or something, or some kind of settlement, and if we still need to hear it at that point, you can bring it back. But short of that, I don't really know what we can do other than deny the application.
May I ask this board to deny their application to paint the wall?
That's what's on appeal, and so we can't, that's what I'm saying. We would either have to hold that until you get a determination of the ownership, or I don't know that the city, based on what the city had at the time, made a mistake. They went through their normal procedures, and in their normal procedures said that they could paint the wall. You came with some surveys and some evidence saying that that was wrong, and I understand that, but we can't make a determination that you're right with that stuff. That's beyond our authority. And so,
Well, the survey was requested for us to submit for this hearing. And so we had the survey done to demonstrate
Okay.
that this wall is not 512 Northwest, excuse me.
sure, I understand.
Third
Whoever recommended that you had that done, I think it's good that you have that done because it provides clarity, but they don't know what the board's going to do. They don't know what the board thinks. And now that you sort of do know what the board thinks, or at least what a few of the board members think, I don't think the board members are comfortable ruling one way or the other on the ownership of that property.
Beyond that, I mean, we are on appeal limited to the issues and evidence that was presented to.
We're de novo, so we can take new evidence if we want. I guess I'm just saying we don't, there's not enough here for me to get, well, I don't think I'll ever be comfortable with this board making property rights determinations on who owns property and who doesn't. And so that's why I'm saying really no amount of evidence, new or old, gets a resolution of this appeal, which is admittedly a very unusual appeal. I've been on this board for years, I've never seen anything like this. But I think this exceeds the power of the board to determine who owns that or not.
It appears to me they're going to end up in district court anyway.
Or they settle it. I think they can resolve this.
They can settle it, or if she actually wants, the board could make a decision to deny it, and then she can appeal to district court immediately.
That's true too.
On the same ground.
I think that would, if the district judge is pretty conservative, the appeal would probably be limited to our decision on the painting issue and not the ownership of the property. So I think they'd have to file a separate suit.
I think it would encompass the issue though, because it's part of the
Maybe.
application.
The ordinance,
Assertion of ownership.
right, I don't have the downtown business district ordinance, but I assume it says that the owner makes the application.
Property owner.
Property owner makes the application. So that's the issue. Did the property owner make the application?
Yeah. That's true. I don't know. I mean,
But you don't have any,
the cleanest way would just file a
Right.
new lawsuit. But
you're gonna, if they're asserting ownership of it, you're gonna end up in district court. They're not gonna let you tear it down. So, I mean, you might as well just go to district court and have the judge determine whether or not the property owner, and you can even ask to quiet title.
May I ask then for a flat-out denial of my appeal here so that I can proceed in district court?
I think,
Of the challenge of ownership.
right. If the board is inclined, I think we could take a motion for that. Again, I'm in favor of denying it. I mean, I guess think through if it's well, so one issue, this is thinking on behalf of the city. One issue is if it gets denied and they're going to appeal, then the city has to appear and defend the Board of Adjustment in that appeal, rather than just the parties dealing with it privately. So I don't know that I want to put the city at the expense of using our city resources just so they can fight out their boundary dispute. You know, so that's one favor of not going that route, and just maybe we continue this indefinitely and someone files an action and then it gets resolved and then you come back in front of us. And then the city doesn't need to get involved. But that's what I'm worried about. If we deny it and you appeal it, he or someone in the municipal counsel's office is going to have a couple of attorneys that are going to have to then defend the Board of Adjustment. So. Can you put your comments in the microphone? Just, yeah.
I had to step forward so I could hear
Okay.
you. I'm sorry. Mr. Jordan, I would ask you if the administrative decision stands, though, what is the effect of that?
It's not binding. That's not a binding property determination. I don't think that, I think you just take that to a judge and say, the city official was wrong. Look at my survey, they were wrong. I think that's not binding
I mean,
at all.
you could file a quiet title right away. I mean, just quiet title against them, and
But this is all assuming that they're asserting ownership of the wall. And pursuant to
Right.
the application, I get it. They said that this wall was on that property. They were wrong. Or supposedly, the appellant says they were incorrect in stating that this address was on that property or that at that specific address. Because it's not like on the application that the appellee said, I want to paint the wall located at the proper address. Had that occurred, obviously, they would have caught it. But again, I hope I'm not missing something, but I keep going back to, if you were to leave here today to go tear down the wall, I haven't heard that they are going to object to that other than another wall should get put up. Not that they exert ownership, and he's nodding his head agreeing with me, so that's where I'm like.
Yeah, but they have an interest in not having an exposed warehouse, right? Like they need or if that's
Sure,
structural.
but that's a different issue of who's responsible for putting up another wall, not the issue of who owns this wall and
Sure.
whether it gets painted or not, or any of those things.
Yeah, I don't want to get too into different legal theories, but I would have some legal theories on their behalf for why they should not tear down that wall. And so I do think there's a dispute there that if they just went and tore it down, I think that they might be injured by that.
Maybe,
I'll
but
just
I
say
haven't,
that.
you know, I mean, again, to me, that's a completely separate issue, and I mean, the appellee's nodding his head, like, yes, that's the thing, I don't understand what we're, you know, I get the reason why, you need to,
Protect their.
you need to protect your property interest right, and you absolutely need to affirmatively dispute any affirmative, right, action of ownership, so I get that, but.
I'd point out that, first, as far as the city resources in court, we're going to be there regardless. So the city's paying the same money for our salaries, whether we go to court to defend it or not. And
For their quiet title action?
no, not for their quiet title, but on this particular case. It's
Why-
just a way to get it into court. This is just a way to get it into court.
Why would we be, as a city, in their quiet title action? I don't
Well,
know.
potentially, they could sue the city for issuing the permit because we
Yeah.
issued a permit. And
Yeah,
they could
they-
say the city determined that they
Yeah.
were the property owner and the right applicant for the permit. So, I mean,
Yeah.
because under the ordinance, technically, only property owners can apply for or with permission of the property owners, can apply for the permit. So,
Again, on its face, the application for the permit to paint had the wrong address. So it's not even like, even in the
Well, it was the right,
application.
it
that
was
he
the right address.
It's not for the wall.
Do walls
correct?
have addresses?
The application named this wall as part of
His building,
512 Third
which it is
Street,
not.
which it is not, and that's the determination. In fact, it's really, I mean, if we go back 3 steps, there's a question whether this application to paint the wall is properly before the board. And that's I guess that's a jurisdictional issue.
Was properly
Is it-
before the
Is it before you?
downtown.
Has the proper owner
If they're the proper
made
owner.
the application?
Right.
Sure, but that goes into us determining who the owner is, again.
I'm sorry, sir?
That goes into us determining who the owner is,
Yes, sir,
which,
it's a basic part of the
right,
application.
which I don't think that we can do. And it's a tricky appeal, but I don't think we can determine. I think conceivably, a board that didn't mind exceeding its authority might determine who the property owner is, but I don't think that the board can determine who the property owner is. And so I don't think we can get to whether the city should have issued it in the first place, because that would require us determining who the property owner was, which I think you guys should determine either privately or in district court.
Of finding any fault with the city
What's,
and granted the permit. It was based on a false application.
okay. Okay. Well, I think just given all the uncertainty, I think probably continuing this is the route to go.
When I read the packet, I thought we were being asked to determine title to real estate, the wall.
Right.
And now that I've listened to this, I'm even more convinced that's what we have to do.
Yes.
And I don't think we can.
No.
So I'm inclined to deny it or continue it. And if it's continued, I'd prefer indefinitely.
Yeah, I might, the only thing, I might just put a year on it, just so that it's just not languishing out there indefinitely.
And I think that meets your purpose, Ms. Williams, which was to make sure that you are making an affirmative effort to combat any wrongful claim to ownership of your client's property. And I think that solution, I mean, you can't overlook the fact that you've objected, brought it here, you went through this process of appealing. So I think your purpose is served in doing that without us having to get into the underlying issue that we don't feel like we have the authority to get into.
Especially if it's still pending. I guess I've sort of assumed this without saying it, but especially if it's still pending. If this proceeding's still pending, you can tell the district judge, the city said that, but we have an appeal on that issue right now pending. And that body is waiting for you to make a decision on that. And so you don't lose your argument that the city was wrong either, because you'll have this appeal pending, so.
If that's y'all's vote, I'll shut up.
If we decide to continue it, it will be based upon what, and what will she have to do in order to come back to us?
She could just notify the city that she wants to, that,
If it's deferred indefinitely, she can bring it back anytime with new notice and half the original fee. If you continue it a year, it won't come back for a year.
okay, so I would say we do that. Maybe everyone calendars this for 1 year, and we continue it for 1 year, and then you don't have to pay a partial filing fee. We don't have to renotice everyone. It's just back on the agenda in 1 year. And if it gets resolved before then, you can notify the city. If it doesn't and you need a longer continuance, you can let us know, but just you come back in a year and hopefully everything's resolved by then.
I think that would be better.
That's your ruling. That's fine.
Okay, yeah, I think once someone makes a motion, that will be, if everyone agrees, that will be what happens, but I can't make a motion, so.
I'll make a motion that we continue case number 15081 for a period of 1 year.
First time for everything.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to continue the appeal in case 15081 for a period of 1 year. Cast your votes. And it's continued.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's hot.
Thank you. Okay, next item is the continued items. I hope you are keeping track.
11, 12, 15.
No one is here.
Out of courtesy for the applicants who are not here, I think we can continue their items for 1 month, and so until August 4th.
That's
We do
9,
that with-
10, 11, 12, 16, and 21.
Can we do that with one motion?
I think so.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second to continue those items for which the applicant was not present until August 4th, 2022. Once you're able to, cast your votes.
How come case 9's on there? Up on the, that's you? Okay. Gotcha.
Okay, and those items are continued. Next item on the agenda is, this is items requiring a separate vote, and it's election of Board of Adjustment officers. So this is as good a time as any to formally disclose that this will be my last meeting, and so we'll need to elect a new chair and vice chair. And I think historically, the former vice chair is often the chair. So
I do not accept.
if there are protests other than the proposed chair, anyone out there wanting to protest, it sounds like we can have a motion to appoint. Maybe a motion to appoint Mr. Privet as chair, and then usually by seniority is the vice chair, so Mr. Voorhees, if we go with tradition, that's how we would do it.
What happens if I have to leave? I'm currently seeking employment.
All right.
Like real 9-to-5 employment.
Or Mr.
Do what I want to.
Or Mr. Voorhees, I mean, you're next on the seniority, so does anyone have a motion to have Mr. Voorhees become chair? Okay. And then Mr. Privet, would you mind serving as vice chair? Okay. So we've got a motion to elect Mr. Voorhees as the incoming chair and Mr. Privet as vice chair. Do we have a second? Okay. Once you're able to, cast your votes, and then a voice vote for Ms. Ybarra.
I need to start calling her Miss Wheaton now.
I know, I need to.
I know we didn't. I turned it off. I said aye. Yes.
By voice vote, she's an aye. Okay, and it's approved. Congratulations, and thank you for your service. Also, you guys, I know it's a lot of time
Thank
sometimes.
you for your
so,
service, Mr. Chairman.
I have appreciated my time, and I know as a board, we've survived some unusual times on the board. I was just thinking about it, we've had COVID, we've had coming back from COVID with all the protocols, we had the home sharing stuff, we've had a lot of stuff that we've had to deal with that's very unique. So thank you all for your service. City staff, thank you for making our jobs incredibly easy. Well, easy as it can be. And I've enjoyed my time here, so thank you all.
Yeah, Board of Home Sharing.
I know, yeah, it's 60% of our docket.
Yes.
Next item is additional items. We have none. Communications and board reports, we have none. Citizens to be heard, seeing none. Any other business? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, guys.